Chapter 743. Chu Qingyan's vomiting of blood immediately shocked the three of them. Su San and Su Si quickly moved closer to their master, surrounding her to protect her from the wild bear's attack. Kai, are you okay? If we can't beat it, let's run. Chu Qingyan's father was anxious, but due to his daughter's previous warning, he didn't dare to leave the circle she had drawn for him. Chu Qingyan heard his words and waved to her father, indicating that she was okay, but this delay allowed the wild bear to attack again. Although the wild bear was heavy, it was very fast. Su San and Su Si managed to block its claws, but they didn't expect its round head to slam into them. The two of them were knocked to the ground because they weren't prepared for it. Seeing that Su San and Su Si were injured, Chu Qingyan took a deep breath, stabilized her breath, and then held it, seriously recalling the information about grizzly bears in her mind. This adult wild bear wasn't something that could be subdued by ordinary people. Facing it head-on wasn't the way, it had to be outsmarted. Very quickly, she thought of something. Su San, Su Si, don't stand up. Chu Qingyan stopped the two of them from confronting it head-on, then motioned them to bend down and whispered, "The weakness of the wild bear is its poor eyesight. Don't appear in its sight." Under Chu Qingyan's command, the two of them had already obeyed, and Chu Qingyan's father immediately squatted down, his eyes looking at the wild bear. Sure enough, everyone's actions succeeded in making the wild bear's movements stagnate, but this was only a temporary delay. In the past, she had heard that if she met a bear in the mountains, all she had to do was to lie down and pretend to be dead because bears would not touch dead things. However, Chu Qingyan had also heard that bears had thorns on their tongues. If she was careless and was licked by a bear, it was very likely that the bear would lick her skin and flesh off. Therefore, it was better to be safe than sorry. She had to think of another plan. At this time, because the few people who were jumping in front of it suddenly disappeared, the wild bear sniffed around and quickly found the direction of Su San. Chu Qingyan's mind lit up when she saw this. Attack its nose, its eyesight isn't good, so it relies on its nose to distinguish. You guys focus on its nose. Su San and Su Si immediately nodded, and the direction of the attack also had a direction, all aimed at the wild bear's nose. The wild bear was also sensitive, aware that its weakness was being attacked. It also knew how to protect itself. After a few rounds, neither side gained any advantage. Chu Qingyan looked at the sky and felt that it wasn't a good idea to continue like this, so she decided to join the battle. But at this time, a grape-sized stone flew towards the wild bear at lightning speed and hit on its fragile nose. Seizing the opportunity when the wild bear was protecting its injured nose, Su San and Su Si pulled out the daggers tied to their thighs and quickly attacked the wild bear. The sharp blades stabbed into the thick and rough skin of the bear's arm. Then, with the unique technique of the fierce cavalry, the wild bear was quickly subdued. Chu Qingyan saw that the crisis was over, then turned to look at her father behind her. Seeing the wooden slingshot in his hand, she couldn't help but smile. "Father, thank you for your help, otherwise we would have been entangled with this wild bear for a long time." Father Chu laughed. "This wooden slingshot is really good to use, and it's very powerful. Later, I'll ask him to make you one to play with." At this time, Su San wiped the blood on his face, came over and reported, "Mistress, the wild bear is unconscious, and it won't wake up for at least an hour. What should we do next?" Chu Qingyan looked at the sky. The sun was about to set, and the mountain wind was gradually biting. This was not a place to stay for long. The first wild bear appeared, and there was no guarantee that there would be a leopard or tiger later. The deep mountain forest was really not a good place to go. Just as Chu Qingyan was thinking, a rustling sound suddenly came from the distant trees, and it was particularly clear in the strange atmosphere of the whistling cold wind. Everyone immediately raised their vigilance. Su San and Su Si looked at each other and nodded. One of them stood in front of their mistress, and the other held a dagger and went forward to check. At this time, a white ball suddenly jumped out from the layers of leaves. Su Si was about to swing his dagger at it, but when he saw it clearly, he suddenly stopped. "Isn't this Xiaonuan's baby?" Su Si put away his dagger and was about to pick it up, but it nimbly dodged, and then rushed to his mistress like an arrow. Chu Qingyan did not expect to meet Snowflake Cake here. She reached out her hand, and Snowflake Cake jumped into her arms. Xiao 3 babies were not named by their father, so she casually named them according to their appearance. The oldest was called by Yutong, the second one was called Snowflake Cake, and the youngest one was called Glutinous Rice Ball. The one who ran back was the second one, Snowflake Cake. Snowflake Cake, why are you alone? Where are your mother and the others? Chu Qingyan hugged it and asked. After rubbing against its mistress, Snowflake Cake remembered its mission. It struggled to jump out of its mistress's arms, then bit the corner of her clothes and dragged it in the direction it came from. Chu Qingyan looked in the direction it was going, then lowered her head to look at Snowflake Cake. Are you taking me to find your mother and siblings? Snowflake Cake heard this and immediately let go of her sleeve, then howled to the sky. Chu Qingyan understood what it was trying to say. She nodded and smiled. I got it. Why does your voice sound like a wolf's howl? Quick, quick, lead the way. Snowflake Cake shook its white fur. I am a wolf. Mistress, you're just blind. Soon Chu Qingyan and the others immediately followed behind Snowflake Cake and quickly ran inside. After rushing through the darkness, they soon saw a large light. Chu Qingyan frowned slightly. Is there someone in front? Just as she was wondering, the closer she got, the more she heard a mournful voice. The voice was familiar, so Chu Qingyan immediately sped up, past Snowflake Cake, and jumped into the fire. Chu Qingyan had expected many situations, but she had never thought that it would be like this. 5 or 6 people wearing animal clothes and holding long spears were confronting Xiao and the others, and at their feet were the gerfalcons, who were chained, and Glutinous Rice Ball, who was locked in a cage. When Little Annoyance and Little Youngest saw her, they seemed to have found their backbone. They immediately leaned towards her and whimpered. Although Chu Qingyan could not understand what they were saying, she could roughly guess that they were complaining and expressing their feelings of grievance. Chu Qingyan reached out to comfort the 2 animals, then turned to the men who were looking at her vigilantly. Who are you? Why did you catch my 2 pets? Bai Yutong and the others also showed their teeth. Chapter 744. When the gerfalcon saw Chu Qingyan, a glimmer of hope flashed across its eyes, but when it heard the word pet, it immediately turned its head to the side. The dignified king of 10,000 eagles was called a captive pet. Where would he put his face? How could it command its subordinates in the future? Chu Qingyan was so focused on checking if they were injured that she didn't notice the gerfalcon's disdain. At this time, her eyes were on the men in animal skins with strange colors on their faces. She could feel the strong hostility emanating from them, as well as a murderous aura that could not be ignored. Your eagle? Heh, whether it's yours or not, we want this eagle and those snow wolves. One of the tall men said rudely, not paying any attention to Chu Qingyan at all. At this time Su-san, Su-si, and the others also arrived. When the 5 or 6 men in animal skins saw that there were more people, the sneer on their faces faded away, and they looked at Chu Qingyan and the others warily. Hearing the tall man's words, Xiaofan saw Glutinous Rice Ball locked in the cage and couldn't help but whimper at Chu Qingyan. Snow wolves. Chu Qingyan was surprised when she heard the name clearly. Coincidentally, Xiaofan whimpered at this time, confirming the tall man's words. Because these animals rarely made a sound, and because there were no strangers in the house, Chu Qingyan didn't pay attention to why they didn't bark like dogs. However, now was not the time to care about their identities. Her eyes turned cold. Who are you? How dare you take other people's things and yell at the owner? You don't deserve to know our identities. If you know what's good for you, get out of the way and we can still let you live. The tall man didn't pay attention to the jade-faced man in front of him at all, thinking that he was just a weak scholar who couldn't even truss up a chicken. Then let's see if you have the ability to take them away. Chu Qingyan's blood was boiling, and the injury she suffered just now was faintly acting up. She swallowed the blood foam, pulled out the software at her waist, and said to Xiaofan, "Protect my father." She knew that Little Annoyance understood her, so she turned around and ordered Su-san and Su-si, "Go." The 3 of them held their weapons, not giving the beast-skinned men any time to react, and immediately attacked. The tall man and the others didn't expect them to be so stubborn. Their faces immediately darkened, and they waved their hands to order their 3 subordinates to block them. Although she didn't know where they came from, Chu Qingyan could feel that their martial arts were different from what she knew. When they first started to think about how to deal with it, it was difficult, but very quickly they gained the upper hand. Xiao Laiqi's techniques were all killing techniques, and were different from flowery and impractical moves. The three of them were no match for him and retreated in defeat. Mr. Chu, little annoyance, and the others all stared unblinkingly at the battlefield with a hint of joy in their eyes. The tall man saw that the situation was not good. So he asked the two subordinates who were watching over the gerfalcon and glutinous rice ball to join the fight. She had just gotten rid of 2 people, and now 2 more came. Chu Qingyan had expended a lot of energy tonight, and she was getting impatient. She had wanted to study their moves a little more, but she was no longer in the mood to do so. At this time, the tall man suddenly raised the iron chain in his hand, and the gerfalcon was dragged up. For the sake of the king's face, the gerfalcon struggled to flap its wings, and the wound on its wound burst because of the force it used to flap its wings, and blood quickly dyed the gauze red. Boy, if you want it to live, then stop. The tall man threatened with a treacherous smile. Chu Qingyan's attention was diverted to the gerfalcon before, so when she saw him pull out a long sword and put it near the gerfalcon's neck, she couldn't help but subconsciously stop. The person who was fighting with Chu Qingyan took the opportunity to attack her chest. Master! Su San and Su Si cried out in horror. Kai Kai! Mr. Chu was so scared that his eyes widened. Chu Qingyan heard the shout and wanted to dodge the attack, but her breathing was unstable at the moment, and the pain from her wound made it impossible for her to dodge. When she was sent flying, Chu Qingyan clearly heard the sound of her bones cracking. Could it be that they were broken? When the scene in front of her quickly receded, Chu Qingyan felt as if many things had been slowed down, and they were magnified and clear in front of her eyes. Her father's cry of pain, Su San and Su Si's shock, little annoyance rushing over, the gerfalcon's shock, and was she seeing things? Why did she see a black figure quickly flying towards her on the branches and leaves? She blinked, and before she landed, she saw who it was. It was Big Ice Cube with an angry face. Hey, Big Ice Cube. She pulled the corner of her mouth, revealing a smile that was uglier than crying. As soon as she finished speaking, she fell into his arms. With a spin of her feet, he landed steadily with her in his arms. Don't talk. Xiao Su originally wanted to scold her for being careless, but when he saw the blood coming out of her mouth, he immediately closed his arms and looked at her with pity. When he saw her being hit, her whole body swayed, and then she was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. He felt suffocated and wished that he was the one who took the hit for her. She was right in front of him, but he couldn't reach out to protect her. The bitterness in his heart was indescribable. I'm fine. She lightly coughed and was weak. It seemed that her injury this time was not light. Xiao Su's eyes were dark. He reached out and pressed a few of her major acupuncture points, then turned around to look at the men wearing animal skins. 2 of them were already subdued by Su San and Su Si. The tall man and the others were also forced to kneel on the ground by the fire spirit Turin. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes and looked at the tall man. She found that his shoulder had been pierced by an arrow. Only when Hai Dongqing regained his freedom did she let out a sigh of relief. As for Hai Dongqing, he forgot to struggle when she was injured and fell to the ground. When he saw that she could still move, he gasped for breath. It's enough to leave one behind. Xiao Su's face was so gloomy that it could drip water. His cold eyes swept over the struggling people, and he slowly gave this order. Su San, Su Si, and the others did not show any mercy when they heard this. Daring to make a move against their master, they simply did not want to live anymore. Especially the person who injured their master, they would not let him die so easily. The tall man was left behind. He quickly wanted to grab the knife on the ground and kill himself, but he was knocked down by the fire spirit. At this time, he narrowed his eyes and wanted to bite the poison in his teeth, but Turin saw through him. He reached out and grabbed his chin, removing the poison in his mouth. Seeing that he couldn't die, the tall man said in a hopeless manner, "Why don't you kill me with a knife? Give me a quick death." He only heard Xiao Su's iron-blooded smile. You want to die? Sure, but it won't be that easy. Feeling the suffocating pressure, the tall man began to panic. He shouted at Xiao Su. What are you doing? This person was not worth his time. Xiao Su directly handed him over to Hualing and the others to deal with. He felt that the person in his embrace was in a mess, so he immediately lowered his head to look at the person in his embrace. Ian. Chapter 745. Ian. Chu Qingyan could feel her strength leaving her body. If it weren't for Big Ice Cube holding her in his arms, she wouldn't have been able to stand. Hearing Big Ice Cube's worried voice, she forced out a smile. I think I broke a bone, but I won't die. Xiao Su frowned when he heard her teasing him in a joking tone, trying to reassure him. How could he not hear the trembling in her voice? If it wasn't because of the pain, why would her lips be pale and her face be covered in sweat? What? Do you still think it's glorious? Xiao Su suppressed the undercurrent in his eyes and cooperated with her. Since she didn't want him to worry about her, he could still listen to her on this matter. Chu Qingyan knew she was in the wrong, so she didn't say anything else. She quickly looked at the gerfalcon and the others. At this time, Hualing and the others were already untying its chains. Seeing it on the verge of death, her heart ached. Be careful not to touch its wound. Stop the bleeding first. Xiao Su coldly snorted. You're still in the mood to care about it? The gerfalcon felt Xiao Su's cold gaze and couldn't help but cover its face with its wings. Although it was the king of eagles, it couldn't help but lower its head in front of this person. When a king faced a king, there would always be one who was weaker. Chu Qingyan immediately hugged his arm and smiled obediently. Father Chu saw his daughter hugging his son-in-law and watched from the side. Kai, let's go back quickly and let little Yama take a look at you. It's okay, father. I got injured a lot when I practiced martial arts before. Chu Qingyan quickly comforted her father. Although Father Chu was worried, he could only nod. Xiao Su watched her frown with pain every time she spoke. Although he didn't say anything, his heart ached even more. He carried her and prepared to go back. Father Chu was relieved to hand his daughter over to his son-in-law. He quickly walked to the cage and saw that glutinous rice ball was fine. He let out a sigh of relief, then turned to glare at the gerfalcon and poked its little head. Little Hai, how can you be so naughty? You hurt Kai. When you're better, you can go wherever you want, okay? Humph. I've raised you for nothing. Hai Dongqing wasn't someone who could be pointed at and scolded. He was about to retaliate, but the more he listened, the more guilty he felt. In the end, he could only lower his head and let Father Chu lecture him. This Yingsheng was truly aggrieved. Turin waited for Father Chu to finish reprimanding Hai Dongqing, then smiled and said, Great Master Chu, if you continue to poke him, I'm afraid Hai Dongqing will regret it to death. Hearing this, Chu Qian's father finally stopped. He rolled his eyes at Hai Dongqing. After scolding him to his heart's content, he walked back valiantly. Little Annoyance and the others rolled their eyes at Hai Dongqing, and then walked away arrogantly. The despised gerfalcon was covered in dust, and its fur was stained with blood. It looked as miserable as it could get. It could only glare at these birds, but it didn't dare to say anything. Since when had it, the king of eagles, allowed to be ridden on its neck by these ants? This Yingsheng is really... If Chu Qingyan knew that Hai Dongqing had been referring to itself as the king of eagles, she would probably spit out a mouthful of blood. This guy is really too much. Just as everyone finished cleaning up the area and was about to head back, they heard an ear-piercing cry. They thought it was from the birds and beasts in the mountains, so they didn't pay it much attention. However, no one noticed that the listless gerfalcon's eyes suddenly widened. However, the sky was already dark, and the mountain wind was getting colder. If they didn't go out at night and attract the attention of the beasts, there would be another fierce battle. Just as Chu Qingyan was about to fall asleep due to exhaustion, she felt a gust of wind blow over. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, messily covering her face. She couldn't help but open her eyes. This wind was a bit abnormal, because it came from the sky. Not only that, but the cry was also getting more and more ear-piercing. It came from afar, covering the sky and the earth. Xiao Su stopped and turned to look at the sky. Everyone raised their heads and looked up vigilantly. They saw that the dark sky was suddenly covered by a large patch of black. It was as if dark clouds were pressing down on them, causing them to feel uncomfortable. However, these dark clouds were moving towards them at an extremely fast speed. This is a flock of birds? No, a flock of eagles. Everyone was stunned. They actually saw so many eagles in a place like Jiangnan. What kind of situation was this? It's the 10,000 eagles. It's the 10,000 eagles. The tall beast-skinned man shouted in pleasant surprise. If it wasn't for his hands being held behind his back, he would have raised his hands and waved them around. 10,000 eagles? Chu Qingyan's eyes flashed with surprise. She then looked at Xiao Su and saw that the other's expression was a bit stiff. With this kind of situation appearing at this time, how could they be happy? The flock of eagles quickly arrived in front of them. The ones in front covered their heads and the sky instantly darkened. Hualing and the others quickly gathered around their master. Hualing's expression was ugly as he said, "Master, where did these eagles come from? It feels like they don't have good intentions." The eagles above their heads were circling in the air with their wings open. They cried out as they stared at the people below with sharp eyes, as if they had a deep grudge. Xiao Su did not know where these eagles came from, but his sharp senses told him that these eagles were coming for them. He immediately gave the order, "Light up the torches and release the signal. We'll wait and see." Because there were no tall trees here, it was a bit brighter than the deeper parts of the forest. However, with the eagles approaching, they were enough to cover the sky. Although they could see clearly, it was not as good as these birds. Hualing nodded and took out a small signal stick. He then lit it and released it into the sky. Not long after, the people searching the mountains came in an endless stream, but when they saw the battle in front of them, they all revealed serious expressions. "Kai Kai, son-in-law, what are these eagles doing? Wu Wu, father is so scared. Father doesn't want to become a meal for these eagles." Father Chu hid behind his son-in-law's back. Seeing the fierce eagle flock, he was scared to death. Chu Qingyan quickly comforted him. "Don't be scared, don't be scared. We'll be fine." Although she said that, she was not confident in her heart. If they were enemies with Xiao Laiqi's skills, it would not be a problem. The problem was that these hundreds and thousands of eagles were not easy to deal with. The eagle flock was slowly gathering, as if they were waiting for their companions to arrive. Seeing the eagle flock grow bigger and bigger, although Big Ice Cube did not say anything, she could feel his body tense up and her heart was also sweating. As for Little Trouble and the other three, they revealed their fangs that they normally would not reveal. Their snow-white fur stood up, showing their stance to the enemy. Chu Qingyan looked at the two armies confronting each other. The tense situation was on the verge of breaking out, and she forced herself to calm down. There must be a reason for everything. Why were these eagles so hostile towards them? She thought for a long time, and suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Her eyes fell onto the gerfalcon in Susan's arms. At this time, it was facing the eagles in the sky. It was trying its best to raise its head, revealing the aura of a king. Chu Qingyan suddenly had a bad feeling. This flock of eagles wouldn't be coming for it, right? Chapter 746. This conjecture seemed to be valid, because at this time, the gerfalcon let out a loud cry, and the circling eagles immediately responded with a loud cry. Their voices were noisy and ear-piercing, but they couldn't hide their excitement. However, the people below immediately covered their ears. This was simply challenging the limits of their eardrums. "Your eagles?" Chu Feng's father also noticed that something was wrong, so he immediately asked the gerfalcon in a daze. The gerfalcon, who had just been despised by everyone, immediately felt the focus of everyone's attention. It raised its head proudly as if it was saying, "You stupid humans, this is my 10,000 eagle army. Are you scared out of your wits?" Seeing the eagles respond, Xiao Su's expression turned ugly. When he saw the gerfalcon's fearless expression, Xiao Su shot it a cold glare. The gerfalcon couldn't help but stiffen. This murderous aura was simply... It immediately avoided Xiao Su's gaze. A wise man submits to circumstances. Because of the gerfalcon's cry, the eagles above were certain that their boss was in their hands. When they saw the injuries all over the gerfalcon's body, they were instantly enraged. Once they were angry, they couldn't be controlled. The 3 or 4 eagles at the front immediately flapped their wings, turned their heads, and let out a loud cry. Then dozens of eagles in front of them swooped down, heading straight for Chu Qingyan and the others. Careful, defend. Xiao Su took a step back and ordered everyone. Yes. They were already on guard against the eagle's every move. When they heard the order, everyone drew their weapons. Although they had encountered many wild beasts when they traveled deep into the mountains, it was still rare for them to fight one against many. Moreover, their opponents were such powerful birds, so they could only brace themselves and face them head-on. Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su stood under a tall tree, watching the battle become more and more intense. Their expressions were unprecedentedly solemn. Seeing that the fire spirits and the eagles were in a fierce battle, Xiao Su decisively put down the person in his arms and handed her to Chu Feng's father. I'll leave Ian to you. If the situation turns bad, don't think of leaving. After saying that, Xiao Su drew his sword and prepared to join the battle. Big ice cube. He landed on the ground in the blink of an eye. Chu Qingyan called out to him worriedly. Xiao Su turned around and patted her head before turning around without saying a word. After all, this was the first time he had encountered so many eagles. Moreover, each of them was taller and stronger than a normal man. They could still break through people's moves, but they were completely disorganized. They either used their beaks to peck people's eyes, or used their sharp claws to scratch people's necks. It was extremely cruel. Many of the people under their command had already been injured. He knew what the little girl wanted to hear, but he couldn't give her any guarantees. Xiao Su's face was tense. The long sword in his hand shone with a bloodthirsty light under the dim shadow. With the addition of their master, everyone's morale reached the peak, and the one-sided situation began to reverse. But it was very difficult for a person to fight against this group of birds. In the blink of an eye, the clothes on Xiao Su's arm were torn. Huo Ling and the others were also injured. Chu Qingyan watched as he entered the situation, but she couldn't say anything to stop him. But at this time, it was useless to say anything, because she and he both knew that he had to go. Even though he knew that the chance of winning was close to zero, he had to draw his sword and couldn't run away. The people in front of him weren't just his subordinates, they were also his companions. Chu Qingyan hated that she was injured and couldn't go up to help. Kai, the scallion is bleeding. Father Chu pointed at his son-in-law who was being attacked by 3 eagles. His heart ached so much that he stomped his feet. He immediately took out a slingshot and fiercely shot at the group of eagles. Chu Qingyan also saw it, but other than being worried, she couldn't do anything. Wait a minute. Looking at the endless amount of eagles flying down from the sky to support them, Chu Qingyan seemed to have thought of something. Big ice cube, use fire to attack. There were some things that didn't need to be said clearly. People who had been together for a long time could cultivate tacit understanding. Xiao Su, who was far away in the middle of the encirclement, heard this and nodded. He turned around and ordered everyone, light the grass and force these eagles away. Huo Ling and Turin heard this and immediately kicked the torches at their feet to the trees on both sides. In this desolate mountain range, there was a lack of everything, but there was no lack of vegetation. The others followed suit, and threw torches at the surrounding trees to prevent the eagles from joining in. When the branches touched the sparks, they quickly caught fire. But because it was spring, the vegetation was moist and couldn't catch fire in large areas. But for Xiao Su and the others, it was already a great help. At the very least, the eagles on the outside didn't dare to join in. Wild beasts were all afraid of fire, especially these feathered birds. Once they were touched by fire, they would turn into fireballs. Taking advantage of this gap, everyone took a breather. But this advantage didn't last for long. These eagles' fighting strength was too strong. Everyone had used up most of their energy, but they were still in a state of excitement. Chu Qingyan watched as the big ice cube's clothes were torn apart by the claws of the 2 eagles. Although he managed to block the attacks with his sword, she could still see traces of blood. Chu Qingyan couldn't hold herself back any longer. She picked up her weapon again and leaped behind him, helping him take on the next wave of attacks. Go back! Xiao Su turned around and saw her. He angrily roared at her. We'll share blessings and hardships together. She dodged the eagle's claws and wiped the corner of her mouth. She wiped away the blood that came from using her qi with a determined expression. Seeing her face of death, the words that he wanted to say to persuade her to go back were stuck in his throat. In the end he frowned and said, You're injured. You're also injured. Chu Qingyan wasn't willing to be outdone as she pouted at his bleeding arm. It was a pity that these words had no effect on him, so she gave up. While fighting, she once again said, I just used my internal strength to heal myself. Other than my right hand not being able to use it, everything else is fine. It could be said that they were fighting a bloody battle. Although Xiao Su didn't want her to take this risk, if they didn't fight to the death, they wouldn't be able to leave this forest tonight. Not only could he not protect his own woman, he had to put her in danger. This made Xiao Su's face turn incomparably pale. But he could only have a cold face and vent his anger on these eagles. Be careful, Xiao Su said through gritted teeth. All right. Chu Qingyan smiled brightly. Then, she stood back to back with Jiang Yi as if they were enemies. Two people in a group, go all out. Xiao Su ordered in a cold voice. When Hualing, Turan, and the others heard this, they immediately followed suit and stood back to back. This way they wouldn't leave their backs open to the enemy. We didn't lose on the battlefield and we didn't die in an assassination. We can't be defeated by these birds. Otherwise, if this spreads, where will our face go? Hualing fiercely wiped the blood off his face and spat out a mouthful of saliva. This kind of death is too humiliating, so we can't accept it. Turan narrowed his eyes and said, a life and death struggle, a battle with their backs to the river. Chapter 747. Although they had already used all their strength, the situation had taken a turn for the worse. There was a great disparity in strength, and the other side had many eagles. Chu Qingyan's group was clearly losing and more of their companions were getting injured. Hualing and the others were already in a killing frenzy. After Turan took care of an eagle, he turned around and loudly said, Master, you and the little princess should leave first, otherwise it will be too late. Quickly. What this king does is not up to you to teach me. Look in front. Xiao Su's body was covered in blood, and he couldn't tell if it was his or the enemy's blood. His face was cold. These birds really were not easy to deal with, and they were quickly injured. Now that they had exhausted their strength, it would be disastrous if they continued like this. But to give up on his companions and leave first, he couldn't do it. While the two of them were talking, those eagles seemed to understand human language and immediately blocked off their escape route, as if they wanted to surround and kill them. Chu Qingyan fiercely cursed out. Just who did they offend? Jin Xian and the others also rushed over at this time. Seeing this situation, they immediately joined the battle. Their arrival tore open a gap and replaced the people fighting, allowing everyone to let out a sigh of relief. At this time, Father Chu saw that his daughter, son-in-law, and Hualing were all heavily injured and in a sorry state. He immediately turned around and snorted at Hai Dongqing. We saved you and you want to repay kindness with enmity. You want your eagles to harm our people? Leave, we don't want you anymore. Otherwise I'll shoot you with a slingshot. Hai Dongqing had been watching the scene, and seeing that everyone was injured, he couldn't help feeling a bit guilty. Hearing Father Chu's words, he felt a bit embarrassed. He did not stop the army from attacking Chu Qingyan's group, because he wanted to teach these people a lesson. He wanted to see if they dared to lock him up and humiliate his prestige as the Eagle King. However, his subordinates seemed to think that he had been injured by them, and were attacking Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su without any regard for their lives. Hai Dongqing suddenly felt that the situation was getting out of hand. Chu Qingyan was supported by Xiao Su as they walked over. The eagles that had attacked them earlier had been replaced by Jin Xian's men, and were now resting. Tonight, Chu Qingyan was injured again and again. She leaned on Xiao Su and heard her father scolding Hai Dongqing. She couldn't help but find joy in her pain. Father, you've said so much to it. What if it doesn't understand you? Wouldn't you just be wasting your energy? She said this was just trying to alleviate the tense of the situation. However, the trembling gerfalcon raised its head and glared at her, indicating that it was not a lowly animal, and could understand human language. Chu Qingyan chuckled, but it affected her wound and she spat out a mouthful of blood. She looked like she was in pain. Xiao Su hugged her in a panic and channeled his inner energy into her body as he scolded her. I told you not to force yourself, but you insisted. I don't want to hear you speak anymore. Chu Qingyan wanted to speak, but she didn't have the strength to do so. This was the most serious injury she had suffered in the past few years, and she was in her most miserable state. Fortunately, he was by her side. The Hai Dongqing wanted to continue torturing these people, but when it saw Chu Qingyan's pale face and how she had spat out blood, it couldn't help but think that if she had not saved it, it would have fallen into the hands of the bandits. Although it would have been saved by the eagles if Chu Qingyan and the others had not arrived, there were no ifs because Chu Qingyan had saved it and was injured because of it. It also remembered the days in the bank and the residence. Chu Qingyan had carefully taken care of it. Although she always liked to tease it, she never had any malicious intentions. Those memories that it didn't want to remember were so rich. While the Hai Dongqing was meditating, Hualing propped up his broken sword and looked at the quiet Hai Dongqing. He suggested to his master, "Master, this matter was caused by Hai Dongqing. With it as our trump card, we don't need to worry about wanting not giving in." He meant to use Hai Dongqing as a hostage. Xiao Su frowned and didn't answer. He had thought of this before. If he could capture the other side's commander, then it would be the best way to intimidate the other side. But he didn't do it. He knew that the little fellow had thought of this, but she didn't do it. It meant that she wasn't willing, and he respected her decision. When the Hai Dongqing heard this, it immediately turned to look at Chu Qingyan. "If you dare to use me to threaten my people, then I'll fight you to the death." Not only Xiao Su, but the Hai Dongqing and Hualing also turned to look at Chu Qingyan. As Chu Qingyan coughed, she felt the gazes of many people. She was stunned for a moment, then calmly looked at the people in front of her. "Big Ice Cube, although this matter was caused by Hai Dongqing, it is still my friend." What she meant was that friends shouldn't use each other, and a friend's life shouldn't be used to threaten each other, even though it was indeed caused by Hai Dongqing. The Hai Dongqing was stunned. If the others saw its stupid look, they would probably laugh. Unfortunately, no one was paying attention to it at this time. Hualing and the others couldn't understand because they weren't the ones who took care of Hai Dongqing. However, Jin Xian, Su San, Su Si, and the others could understand. Chu Qingyan knew that she wasn't being responsible for everyone's lives by saying this at this time, but she still sighed and said, "The cycle of karma is caused by us." Back then, when Hai Dongqing was shot by an arrow, cough cough, when she said this, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but cough again. Xiao Su calmed her down with a sullen face and said to the crowd in an indisputable tone, "This prince has never used the old, the weak, the sick and the disabled to ask for protection. If you have such thoughts, why don't you use them to fight the enemy? The fierce cavalry trained by this prince will not be defeated so easily. Just treat this as a training, survival of the fittest." The fierce cavalry and the others all looked serious. This subordinate understands. They readied themselves and prepared to set out again. Old, weak, sick or disabled. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. But after she smiled, she was even more moved because Big Ice Cube was protecting her and supporting her unconditionally. With a lover like this, what more could she ask for? She tightly grasped Xiao Su's hand and whispered, "Big Ice Cube, thank you." Xiao Su's eyes focused on her face and said sternly, "I didn't do it for you." She rubbed her face against his clothes and said with a smile, I know. I know you didn't want me to feel guilty. Thank you, Big Ice Cube." At this time, Chu Qingyan looked at the abnormally quiet Hai Dongqing through the firelight. Although her eyes were gentle, her tone carried a faint sigh. "Little Hai, you should go back. Go back to your group of eagles. We didn't mean to hurt you, but since we saved you, let's forget about our grudges." Chapter 748. Let go of all grievances? The gerfalcon raised its head to look at Chu Qingyan. Due to the injury on its wing, it was in so much pain that it staggered. Was this little girl going to let it go? "I originally wanted to let you leave after you recovered, but I didn't expect you to be so impatient and sneak away on your own." Chu Qingyan felt a little helpless. Did it really think that they were going to imprison it? "Go back to your family, and tell them to stop as well. We mean you no harm, so let's clear up the misunderstanding." Chu Qingyan didn't know if the gerfalcon could understand what she was saying. When she thought about how it had ignored her before, she felt that this was a last resort. This was a hopeless situation. With their manpower, it was difficult to resist the endless stream of eagles. Although the flames could block the eagles for a while, it was difficult to guarantee that they would be buried in the sea of fire. Xiao Su's arms tightened as if he wanted to rub her into his bones and blood. Sensing the big ice cube's emotional fluctuations, Chu Qingyan withdrew her gaze from the gerfalcon and turned to look at him with an apologetic expression. Big ice cube, as long as we are strong enough, we won't be easily trampled on by others. But this time if we fail, it won't be because of us, but because of bad luck. She smiled and comforted him. Her big ice cube was an ambitious and ruthless person. He had not been defeated on the battlefield, nor had he been drowned in politics. If he were to fall in such a situation, it would be a very sullen way to die. I know. Xiao Su held her hand and gently kissed it. After so many years together, how could he not know what she was trying to say? At this time, the crowd was attracted by the tenderness of their two masters. Suddenly, a small change caught their attention. The silent gerfalcon suddenly stood up and moved its wings, but found that it couldn't fly. In the end, it could only limp towards the center of the battlefield. Although the situation was cruel and solemn, when they saw the gerfalcon dragging its clumsy wings and stumbling forward in a comical manner, they couldn't help but laugh. But they were more curious about what it was going to do. Could it really stop this fierce battle like the princess said? The battle was still going on, and everyone was injured. Then, under everyone's watchful eyes, the gerfalcon walked to the center of the battlefield. Even the eagles circling in the sky slowed down and stared at the Eagle King with wide eyes. Then, the gerfalcon raised its head and let out a long cry at the eagles. Although the cry wasn't very strong because of its injury, it was still very clear to these birds with their sensitive ears. Many people, including Chu Qingyan, didn't understand the meaning of the cry and held their breaths. At this time, a surprising scene occurred. The eagles on the ground that were still clamoring to fight with Xiao Lai's cavalry suddenly flew up into the sky and left the battlefield. Jin Xian and the others saw this and immediately returned to their master's side. They held their weapons and aimed them at the eagles in the sky, not daring to relax. Although the gerfalcon was in a very sorry state, everyone seemed to see the aura of a king on its body, because there were some things that wouldn't change with time and circumstances. Chu Qingyan smiled. It seemed that the gerfalcon had reached an agreement with them, and their crisis was temporarily resolved. After the eagles returned to the sky, only the gerfalcon was left standing. But soon, 5 eagles flew down from the sky. Chu Qingyan recognized them. They were the male eagles that had led the troops into the mountains and were giving orders to their men. She saw them land in front of the gerfalcon. Their posture was no longer as fierce and domineering as before. They bowed their heads in front of the gerfalcon. When Chu Qingyan and the others saw this scene, they couldn't hide their surprise. It was the first time they had seen a king and his subjects outside of the human body. They felt that it was hilarious, but they quickly stopped smiling. That was because these eagles had almost caused them to lose their lives here. Therefore, the abilities of these eagles could not be underestimated. No one understood the language of the eagles, so when the gerfalcon and the eagles communicated, no one understood. The atmosphere was strangely quiet. When Chu Qingyan calmed down, she felt exhausted. Just as she was about to fall asleep, she suddenly felt a few eyes on her. She couldn't help but squint. She saw the gerfalcon and its subordinates looking at her. When she turned her head, the gerfalcon chirped a few times. Chu Qingyan was puzzled and asked Xiao Su, "Is it calling me over?" Xiao Su also didn't understand the language of the eagles, but it was as she guessed. "Do you want to go over?" Chu Qingyan and the gerfalcon's proud eyes met. She pondered for a moment before nodding. "Let's go take a look." "I'll go with you." Xiao Su nodded and carried her over to the gerfalcon. Hu Ling and the others wanted to follow, but they were stopped by a look from their master. They could only watch the scene with vigilance. They gripped their weapons tightly in case of an emergency. The gerfalcon only wanted Chu Qingyan to come over, but when it saw that Xiao Su was also coming over, it was very unhappy. However, when it saw that Chu Qingyan was seriously injured, it could only swallow its anger. After all, it and Xiao Su didn't see eye to eye. It didn't like humans who were more imposing than it. "What is it?" Chu Qingyan felt the gerfalcon's hostility towards the big ice block. She was a bit confused, but she still spoke to it gently. The gerfalcon moved aside, revealing the 5 eagles behind it. Just as Chu Qingyan was puzzled, she saw a shocking scene. The 5 eagles opened their arms and lowered their heads. It was like a human expressing submission. Everyone was stunned. This was simply too inconceivable. Chu Qingyan was also shocked. She looked at the big ice block, who also shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. At this time, the tall man wearing animal skin looked at the scene with excitement. He muttered, "This is the eagle expressing its gratitude for peace." Although his voice was not loud, the people present were all highly skilled in martial arts, so they could hear him clearly. After Chu Qingyan's surprise, the corners of her mouth curved. Just as she was about to say something, she saw the gerfalcon lower its head and peck at her chest. She didn't know what it was looking for, but soon, it pulled out a pure white feather from her chest and held it in its mouth. Then, it pondered for a moment, as if it was mourning something. It took 2 steps forward, stretched out its neck, and touched the back of Chu Qingyan's hand with its beak. Everyone was puzzled. Was it giving her a gift? But was it giving her a feather? Wasn't it too strange? The tall man's eyes widened. He was even more shocked than when he saw the eagle lower its head. Was it expressing submission? The leader of the eagles submitting. Chapter 749. Chu Qingyan was also dumbfounded. She had no idea what Hai Dongqing was trying to do. Was he plucking a feather to show that he was giving her a gift? At that moment, everyone heard the tall man's cry of surprise. The Eagle King is recognizing a master. What? Chu Qingyan turned to look at the tall man, her face full of surprise. Initially, the tall man was still very against Chu Qingyan and company. However, after witnessing how they did not abandon him despite the intense battle, and the shock of this sudden turn of events, he no longer cared about his position. Now he was more surprised than he was rational. I've already heard of an ancient legend. There was once an eagle king who recognized a goddess as his master. He would pull out the feather closest to his chest as a token of submission. However, for so many years, the eagle king has been unruly. Very few people have ever heard of him recognizing a master, so this legend has only been treated as a joke. I never thought that I would be able to see such a scene in my lifetime. My life has not been in vain. Seeing the tall man's agitated tone and envious gaze as he looked at Chu Qingyan with an unconcealable expression, the crowd came to a realization and believed him. Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su looked at each other as a glint flashed across their eyes. Then, they turned to look at Hai Dongqing with tacit understanding. Hai Dongqing glanced at the tall man. Who told you to talk so much? Is that what you mean? Chu Qingyan felt that it was better to ask for Hai Dongqing's opinion. Hai Dongqing silently agreed. Because she had recovered some strength, Chu Qingyan nodded to Xiao Su, and Xiao Su put her down. Since Hai Dongqing was willing to recognize a master, she couldn't accept it in such a manner. Her feet touched the ground as a sign of respect. She stretched out her hands and took the feather in Hai Dongqing's mouth, her expression solemn. Xiao Su took a step back and watched as she walked towards Hai Dongqing and took the feather. Her expression was full of pride. The moment she received Snowy Feather, the gerfalcon bowed its head to her in the most devout manner possible. The eagles on the ground, in the air, and in the branches all began to sing in unison. In an instant, the cries of the eagles filled the sky as if they were announcing something or making an oath. Chu Qingyan's red robes were already very eye-catching to begin with. Now that her red lips were burning, she looked even more enchanting and seductive in the midst of the flames, making it hard for anyone to look away. Xiao Su's gaze was filled with gentleness. His little fellow had finally grown up and soared into the heavens, becoming even more dazzling. Chu Qingyan felt his gaze. She turned around and smiled sweetly at him. Her eyes were overflowing with light and color. They were even more beautiful than the night sky that covered the mountains and plains. Then, she lowered her head slightly and looked at the gerfalcon that had reached her shoulder. She smiled and asked, "Do you want me to exchange something with you?" As she spoke, she looked at the items on her body and pretended to be serious. When the gerfalcon heard her words, It rolled its eyes. Just accept it and don't pluck a single strand of hair from its body. It's not easy to keep. So it ignored Chu Qingyan and turned around to walk towards its shrimp soldiers and crab generals. It struggled to walk. Chu Qingyan revealed a rare look of embarrassment. She turned her head and looked at the person who was walking back to her side. She innocently asked, "Am I being looked down upon by Little Hai?" Then, the gerfalcon that was walking in front of her immediately felt Xiao Su's cold gaze. It shrank its head back. This person beside the little girl was really an eyesore. Seeing that the gerfalcon seemed to have something to say to the leaders of the eagles, Xiao Su gently stroked her head. "Are you tired?" Chu Qingyan shook her head. With the steady flow of true qi that he had poured into her, she was already feeling much better. It was just that her wound hurt, but she could still endure this little pain. At this time, Hualing walked over. Although his shoulder was bleeding and his injury was not light, he still had a smile on his face. With a happy expression he said, "Master, little princess, although our people are all injured, fortunately, there are no casualties." Xiao Su's tense expression eased a lot. He nodded to Hualing and said, "First, bandage the wounds. If the injuries are too serious, send them back for treatment." "Yes." Hualing nodded and withdrew. "I really didn't think that there would be so many accidents on this trip." Chu Qingyan looked at the fierce cavalry that were bandaging each other's wounds, and then looked at the gerfalcon that was holding a discussion. There was an indescribable feeling in her heart. It was like she had just walked through the gates of hell. This feeling was a bit like being reborn. I also didn't expect this. Although there were a lot of casualties on this trip, the little fellow had also gained a lot of help. If the gerfalcon could be used by her, then he could rest assured in the future. There were 2 or 3 fierce cavalry that were seriously injured. Turin and the others cut down branches and made a simple stretcher, planning to transport the injured back. At this time, the gerfalcon and its confidants were done talking. Then, the 3 eagles flew up into the sky and led the rest of the eagles in circling around the area a few times before leaving. In an instant, the dark clouds scattered and the sky cleared up. However, it was already close to night. The bright moonlight and faint starlight scattered over the mountain forest, softening the gloomy atmosphere. At this time, Chu Qingyan looked at the 2 eagles that followed behind the gerfalcon, and the corners of her mouth twitched. "These are his 2 great guards." The gerfalcon raised its head proudly, and then took the lead to go back. "They're so smart." Mr. Chu, who was helping to watch over the tall man, rubbed his chin. It was a novel experience for him. Then, he jumped up and patted the head of one of the eagles. He said happily, "They're so cool. I want a guard too." The 2 eagles turned their heads sullenly. If it wasn't for the king saying that this was their master's father, their heads would not be touched so easily. Glutinous rice ball. And the others also jumped behind Father Chu. They were very happy. "Let's go home." Xiao Su bent down and picked her up with a faint smile. "Okay." Chu Qingyan raised her small face and nodded with a smile. When they walked out of the mountain forest, they met Lin Fengyi, who was leading the soldiers. What happened? Lin Fengyi dismounted and was surprised to see his friends in a sorry state. When he heard his subordinates report that a large group of eagles suddenly appeared in the mountain forest in the east, and caught fire not long after, he personally led his men to investigate. However, he didn't expect to see such a scene. "I'll tell you in detail later." Xiao Su mounted his horse. He thought of something and said, "I'll leave the rest to you." Only then did Lin Fengyi see the injured and unconscious Chu Qingyan in his arms. He was stunned for a moment before Chu Qingyan disappeared in front of him. When he came back to his senses, he heard his subordinate exclaim, "Sir, the fire is getting bigger. If we don't extinguish it quickly, it will spread to another mountain." Lin Fengyi looked in the direction of the voice. When he saw the scene in front of him, he finally understood what his good friend meant by trouble. He held his forehead and sighed faintly. Then he immediately ordered his men to extinguish the fire. "Why is the wind so cold tonight?" Chapter 750. By the time Chu Qingyan woke up, it was already noon the next day. When she opened her eyes with great effort, she vaguely saw a beautiful figure swaying in front of her. She asked uncertainly, "Yan Luo?" When Cheng Yanluo finished tying the last knot, she raised her head and said angrily, "You still know who I am? Looks like you're not stupid." Chu Qingyan laughed mischievously, which affected her wound. She felt as if her whole body had been crushed by something, and her bones ached all over. Cheng Yanluo rolled her eyes when she heard her cry out. She raised her hand to pinch her little face and sighed. "Little girl, should I say that you're ill-fated, or should I say that you're blessed with great fortune? Do you know that if your chest bone was broken a little more, it would have hit your heart? How can you still laugh? If you really lose your life, let's see how you'll be able to laugh." Chu Qingyan curled her lips. Although her face was pale, she was in good spirits. She said flirtatiously, "This is called good fortune after surviving a great disaster. Also, don't you think you should hug me and cry? It wasn't easy for me to come back from the gates of hell. I don't care if you want to cry on each other's shoulders. If you can tell me how old I was when you went to the gates of hell and saw the book of life and death, I won't hold you accountable for your reckless actions." Cheng Yanluo snorted. Chu Qingyan immediately changed the topic guiltily. "Should I take my medicine? If not, I want to eat. I'm so hungry." Cheng Yanluo poked her forehead in exasperation. "All you think about all day is eating. If you encounter a wild beast in the future, retreat first. Don't be so foolish as to pounce on it. Also, don't force yourself when you're injured. You even used your internal energy. Do you want your little body to be crippled? Be careful. Otherwise, you'll suffer when you're old." Of course, Chu Qingyan could tell that Cheng Yanluo was concerned about her. It was just that Cheng Yanluo had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. "My good sister, don't say any more. I've been in a few fights and I'm starving. I promise I won't act rashly next time," Chu Qingyan said coquettishly. Cheng Yanluo finally let her go. All right. Don't sugarcoat your words. Your good servant will bring you food in a while." Seeing that she was about to leave, Chu Qingyan was puzzled. "Aren't you going to chat with me? I'd love to, but there are so many of you who are injured. As doctors, we have to perform our duties and help the world." Cheng Yanluo was already outside the door by the time she finished speaking. She waved her hand at her and disappeared. Chu Qingyan smiled. Kong Ling was always in charge of the injuries of the Xiao cavalry. If Yanluo did nothing, no one would say anything about her. However, there were too many injured this time. Kong Ling probably couldn't handle it all, so Yanluo volunteered to help. What an awkward girl with a sharp tongue but a soft heart. At this moment, Xining really came in with the food. Her eyes were as red as a rabbit's. "Master, you're finally awake. You don't know how scared I was when His Highness sent you back. If anything happened to you, what would I do?" Xining burst into tears as she spoke. It seemed that she was really frightened. Chu Qingyan was helpless against girls' tears. She hurriedly comforted her. "Aren't I fine? I didn't lose an arm or a leg. But a broken bone will take 100 days to heal. I don't know when you'll recover." Xining's tears fell down as she spoke. Chu Qingyan's heart was bitter. She had to beg for forgiveness and comfort when she was in pain. Couldn't she just be a quiet patient? Finally, Xining's tears stopped, and Chu Qingyan could finally eat the hot soup and hot rice that she had not eaten for a long time. "Is Jin Xian seriously injured?" Chu Qingyan asked when she saw Xining's worried expression. "Yes, I was almost scared to death by him. My whole body was covered in blood," Xining replied instinctively. Her eyes reddened again. Then, when she met her master's teasing gaze, she reacted belatedly and stomped her feet. "Master! Okay. I won't tease you anymore. I know his left hand is injured, but he likes to bear it. I'll leave him in your care." Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and smiled. Xining blushed and replied, "Yes, master." "Okay, go check on Ethereal. Is he done with his work? Tell him to come over when he's free," Chu Qingyan ordered as she drank the hot soup. "Understood." After Chu Qingyan finished eating and regained some strength, Ethereal followed Xining into the room. Chu Qingyan nodded and gestured for him to sit down before asking, "How are His Highness' injuries?" Ethereal knew that she would ask about his master's health first, so he had already prepared an excuse. "His Highness only suffered external injuries. He just lost a lot of blood and is now recuperating. Master originally wanted to come over to see you, but this subordinate thought that Master's body might not be able to take it, so I added some sleeping powder into his medicine. This morning, Master woke up and fell asleep after taking the medicine. He should be awake by now. Aren't you afraid that His Highness will pursue the matter of you drugging him without permission? Chu Qingyan looked at him with a half-smile. This subordinate is willing to bear all the blame. Ethereal had already thought of the outcome, so his answer was resolute. Chu Qingyan could not help but laugh. I'm just saying it casually. Actually, I've asked you to come here because I want to ask for your opinion. Young Princess Consort, please speak. Ethereal replied respectfully. Originally, I wanted to return to Lianqing with Yanluo, but I can't leave in my current condition. So I wanted to ask if you're willing to return to Lianqing with Yanluo on my behalf and help me set up a flower garden? Chu Qingyan asked as she looked at his expression. Ethereal lowered his eyes. Young Princess Consort, this subordinate is very willing to help you with this matter. However, most of the fierce cavalry are injured and this subordinate needs to stay behind to treat them. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Speak human. Chu Qingyan said indifferently. Ethereal sighed. She doesn't want to see this subordinate anymore. If I appear in front of her again, I'm afraid she'll be unhappy. It's better for this subordinate to watch her from afar. Chu Qingyan shook her head. Many people thought that Ethereal had been instructed by her, and was playing hard to get. Unfortunately, she knew that Ethereal was, I understand. She wanted to say a few words on behalf of Yanluo, but in the end, she didn't know what to say. Moreover, she didn't have enough energy, so she could only give up. Love was something that could only be figured out by both parties. Ethereal's expression was indifferent, and his emotions were hidden in his eyes. At this moment, Xining rushed in recklessly. Master, young Master Hua is here. So, Master Lin is here too. That's normal. They're here to visit the injured. But young Master Hua and Master Lin are quarreling. Chapter 751. Quarreled? Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. She had never heard of any conflict between Xiao and Lin Fingyi. Unfortunately, she couldn't leave the bed and go to the scene personally, so she could only ask Xining. Xining naturally knew that his master was curious at this time, and immediately narrated in full detail. The reason was simple. Xiao and Lin Fingyi quarreled because of a disagreement. It wasn't a big deal, but from Xining's description, it was a one-sided quarrel because Lin Fingyi's expression was gentle and didn't seem angry at all. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh and shake her head when she heard that it wasn't a big deal. She should have guessed that with Lin Fingyi's temperament and years of experience as an official, he wouldn't do something as ungentlemanly as quarreling with a girl. However, she was still curious about Xiao's bad relationship with him. After all, Xiao was a smooth and slick person. Other than her conflict with the Chun family, she had never heard of any conflict with anyone. Moreover, the other party was the official of Jiangnan, and was in charge of many people's lives and the rise and fall of industries. However, when she thought of how Xiao dared to fight with someone during the opening ceremony, Chu Qingyan felt that there was nothing she wouldn't do. For a moment, she admired Xiao's daring nature even more. Let Yanluo go and take a look. Chu Qingyan instructed Xining. Lin Fingyi was Big Ice Cube's close friend after all, and he was also the magistrate of Jiangnan. However, it was impossible for Big Ice Cube to mediate. It would be good enough if he didn't watch the show from the sidelines. As one of the owners of this residence, she should step in. However, wasn't she injured? After much consideration, she still felt that it was more appropriate to let Yanluo be the mediator. Xining accepted the order and left. Chu Qingyan looked at Ethereal and was silent for a moment before she spoke. Ethereal, you have to think carefully about the matter between you and Yanluo. I won't interfere, but I can't watch you become strangers. It's up to you whether you want to go to Lianqing City or not. I won't force you. Ethereal smiled sadly. Thank you for your understanding, young princess. This subordinate will stay here to look after my injured companions. Chu Qingyan saw that he had made up his mind, so she didn't say anything more. She let him go back to work. She closed her eyes for a moment, then heard Xining's voice and a flurry of footsteps. She couldn't help but open her eyes. Cheng Yanluo and Hua Xiuli followed behind Xining as they slowly walked in. I was wondering who had come. What wind blew young Master Hua here? Chu Qingyan smiled. Hua Xiuli was not in a hurry to reply to Chu Qingyan. Instead, she pointed at Chu Qingyan with a smile and said to Cheng Yanluo, I thought she was seriously injured and was probably mentally exhausted. I didn't expect her to have the leisure to tease me at this moment. If I had known, I wouldn't have left my business to visit her. I completely agree with you. Just now, I was rendered speechless by her words. I couldn't do anything to her. Cheng Yanluo chimed in from the side. Chu Qingyan was choked by the duo's words. She wanted to cry, but had no tears. Xining pursed her lips and snickered at the side. However, she didn't forget to help her master greet the guests. As she grew older and learned many things from following Chu Qingyan also trusted her to manage the residence's affairs. Now, she was already Chu Qingyan's capable right-hand woman. She assisted the steward in managing the residence's affairs, both big and small. She also had prestige in front of the servants, so it was easy for her to receive guests. After Xining left, Cheng Yanluo sipped her tea and said, I have to say, you're a master who knows how to lead people. Everyone by your side has almost turned into spirits. Chu Qingyan knew that she was referring to Xining and Jin Xian. That young Xiaohuan is also not bad. She's been helping to manage the continuation products for the past few days. The money she spent is flowing into our shop like water. That Chen Jiawang is so envious that he's green with envy. Speaking of this, Hua Xiuli became even more excited. She continued, Qingyan, you don't know, but in the rouge and face powder industry, our Hua family has always been suppressed by the Chen family. Now that we've met a benefactor like you, I can hold my head up high. Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yanluo were amused by her smug look. Chu Qingyan didn't dare to laugh out loud because of her wound. However, after laughing, she remembered that she had met the Chen brothers before and couldn't help but mention it to them. She said, I think the eldest son of the Chen family isn't easy to get along with. We have to be more careful when doing business recently. We can't let people take advantage of us. Hua Xiuli nodded repeatedly, but she said in a surprised tone, Everyone says that Chen Mingluan is a rare refined gentleman. I thought you would be deceived by his behavior when you met him, but I didn't expect you to be so insightful. I'm just looking through the skin to see the essence. Besides, if he's really a noble and proud refined gentleman, how could he be tainted with the stench of money like us? A gentleman is just a disguise. Because she had stayed in the capital and Lianqing for so many years, how could she not know that there were many people who were two-faced? Hua Xiuli and Cheng Yanluo agreed with her. Cheng Yanluo even raised her hand and tapped her forehead lightly. She said angrily, You make it sound like we're also vulgar people who stink with the stench of money. Hua Xiuli laughed. What's wrong with being vulgar? I'm more than happy to be a vulgar person who hugs banknotes to sleep. The three of them laughed. After Hua Xiuli and Cheng Yanluo left, Chu Qingyan didn't feel sleepy. Instead, she was excited because she had chatted with them. She didn't want to go down and walk around. Just as she was about to ask someone to pass her a book to read to pass the time, she heard footsteps coming in. She thought it was Xining, so she didn't raise her head and gave the order. After she finished speaking, she felt that the footsteps were heavy. She also heard no response, so she couldn't help but raise her head. The moment she looked up, the tall and handsome figure of the person came into view. The light behind him shone brightly, making his cold and hard face seem somewhat gentle. Warm wetness gradually filled his eyes, like a tidal wave surging up. Xiao Su stepped into the room. When he heard her words, he couldn't help but say, Why are you reading instead of resting? If you tire your eyes out, you'll cry. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw the sparkling and translucent light in her eyes. His breath stopped, and he couldn't help but quickly walk forward. You're so fragile that you can't even bear to be told off. Although he was lecturing her, he had already walked to the bed and reached out to pull her into his embrace. Chu Qingyan sniffled and raised her hand to hug him back. This was only because when she saw him again after being on the brink of death, her heart suddenly surged with emotions. It was too sudden, and she couldn't control herself. Who told you to bully me? I just wanted to read a book. Why are you so fierce? Chu Qingyan said tearfully. As soon as he heard her sobbing, Xiao Su's heart, no matter how cold and hard it was, should have melted. In all honesty, how did he provoke this crying kitten? Chapter 752. Although he was speechless, Xiao Su increased the strength in his arms. How could he not feel the emotional impact of regaining what he had lost? If you want to look, go ahead. I won't stop you. But you should rest well for the time being. Xiao Su didn't know how to comfort others, but he had spent all his effort on the person in his arms. Chu Qingyan naturally knew that he wasn't good at this. Hearing this, she was already full of joy. Not to mention that she was the one who was being unreasonable. She raised her hand to wipe away her tears. But someone was faster than her. His slender fingers gently caressed her cheeks, gently wiping away her tears. She had just calmed down from her agitated emotions, but this situation made her feel embarrassed. She wanted to avoid him, but he held her tightly in his arms and she couldn't move. So she just thickened her skin and allowed him to help her. But as he wiped, he ended up wiping her lips. Chu Qingyan's face heated up. She was crying with her eyes, not her mouth. Just as her face was getting redder, the person in front of her couldn't resist the temptation of her pink lips. He lowered his head and captured her fragrance. He felt that she was still too pale. After losing so much blood, he had to let her regain her color. So he took his time rubbing against her. Occasionally, his tongue would slide past her teeth, tickling the tip of her heart until it trembled. From time to time, his tongue would entangle with hers, changing into various shapes. Later on, for some reason, the air became hotter and hotter. Xiao Su couldn't control his movements anymore, making her moan softly. Ugh! Seeing that she suddenly broke out in a cold sweat, Xiao Su immediately stopped and asked, "What's wrong?" "You're pressing on my wound." Although she was embarrassed, she bit her lip and said shyly. Xiao Su was a little regretful when he heard that. In a moment of passion, he forgot that she was injured. He couldn't help but blame himself. He pulled the blanket over and wrapped her in it, then hugged her in his arms. "I won't touch you anymore." Chu Qingyan's face heated up, and she curled up in the blanket. The two of them leaned against each other quietly. Perhaps this didn't mean much to others, but to the two of them, it was indeed very precious. After surviving a disaster, to be able to hug the person you cared about and feel each other's warmth, you could finally feel at ease. That was why Xiao Su had lost his rationality just now. He didn't care about her injury because he wanted to feel her existence. Big Ice Cube, I can't go to Lian City this time, so I asked Yan Luo and Xiao Huan to go back on my behalf. I've already written the plan to Mu Ling. He's a dependable person. Chu Qingyan reached out and held his hand, playing with it. She thought to herself, why are my Big Ice Cube's fingers so beautiful? Xiao Su hugged her and let her play with his hand. What are you worried about? He asked. Chu Qingyan smiled. Big Ice Cube can read minds? Xiao Su snorted coldly. Chu Qingyan's eyes curved, and then she said seriously, actually, it's because Yan Luo and Xiao Huan are girls. Although I've sent people to protect them, I'm still a little worried. Ethereal doesn't want to go? Xiao Su asked again. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. Big Ice Cube, you're really a god. You can even guess this. Xiao Su couldn't help but feel happy to be praised by the person he loved. Actually, it was very simple to guess this matter. Ethereal was called away by the little fellow in his room today. Thinking about what she was saying now, and Ethereal's recent performance, he had an answer. If Ethereal doesn't want to go, we can find someone else. Xiao Su suggested. Jin Ling. Chu Qingyan blinked. She had promised Jin Ling that he would go with her, but she was afraid that he wouldn't be able to leave because of the busy business of the bank. Xiao Su nodded. He's been detained in Jiangnan for so many years. It's time for him to go out. Chu Qingyan's heart warmed. Big Ice Cube treated his subordinates very well. He didn't treat them as his subordinates at all. Okay, I'll tell him later. No, I'll talk to him later. Chu Qingyan didn't have any objections. The two of them chatted for a while. In the past, Xiao Su couldn't stand the cloying look of others. He felt that it was shameful to waste time on this. But now, when he really experienced it, he realized that it wasn't shameful at all. Instead, he felt that it wasn't enough to just look at each other. He couldn't wait to keep them by his side all the time. Worried that the little fellow would be bored, Xiao Su picked a few things to talk about. As they talked, they reached the border. Water Spirit sent a message. Xiao Ran has lost 2 battles in a row and lost 2 cities. Xiao Su's voice was a little bleak. Chu Qingyan was surprised. Didn't they just win some time ago? How could they lose in such a short time? Xiao Su didn't tell her everything. In fact, Xiao Ran didn't just lose 2 cities. Even the land that he had recovered a few days ago was taken away. Chu Qingyan felt that Xiao Su's mood was unstable, so she didn't ask about the details of the battle. She just felt a little uneasy, as if the thing she was worried about was about to happen in front of her. She didn't want to talk about such a heavy topic, so she changed the topic. By the way, Big Ice Cube, I didn't expect Xiao Hai to be the leader of the 10,000 Eagles. I also didn't expect that the Eagle King would recognize me as his master. I'm afraid no one would believe me. Just thinking about it makes me feel incredible and awe-inspiring. Knowing that she was deliberately trying to make him happy, Xiao Su said intimately, "How could my Ian be an ordinary person?" Chu Qingyan giggled from his rubbing, then said, "But I don't know how to discipline the eagles. I've wronged Xiao Hai to follow me for no reason." Xiao Su didn't think much of it. "The person we caught in the forest yesterday is from the Eagle clan. He's best at training eagles. Now that he's willing to swear allegiance to you, you can observe him for a while. If you think he's reliable, you can keep him." Chu Qingyan nodded. Since Big Ice Cube had spoken, it meant that Big Ice Cube had already investigated that person's background thoroughly. She was relieved. Then, as if she had thought of something, she lifted her head and said in a joking tone, "Big Ice Cube, if there comes a day when we have no choice but to face the enemy, you have the fierce cavalry and I have the 10,000 eagles. We can keep a peaceful place for ourselves." When Xiao Su heard her words, he couldn't help but want to tease her. But when he raised his head and saw the seriousness and trust in her eyes, his throat tightened and a warm feeling filled his heart. He nodded slightly, but couldn't say a word. He hugged her tightly. "If such a day really comes, I'll do my best to protect you." Chu Qingyan hugged him back, feeling the warmth of this moment. She had said those words in advance, but she didn't expect them to come true in the future. Because the army led by Xiao Ran had been defeated again and again. They were completely routed and bitterly holding on. It was just that the news of the battle hadn't reached the capital yet. Once there was an unforeseen event, it would be time for Xiao Su to return. Chapter 753. Big Ice Cube was a man of his word. Soon, Jean Ling received the order and went to her room. Because Jean Ling had been in business for many years, she didn't need to waste her breath on many things. Thus, she picked out the important things to tell her. Then Chu Qingyan asked, "His Highness asked you to accompany him to Lian City. Are you willing?" Jean Ling said seriously, "This subordinate is willing. It's rare to have a chance to go out and have a look. This subordinate can't ask for anything more." "Oh." Chu Qingyan dragged her words for a long time. Then she asked doubtfully, "Is it not because of Xiao Huan?" Jean Ling coughed lightly. Little Princess Fei misunderstood. "So it's like this." Chu Qingyan rubbed her chin, then said with some distress, "Recently I've been injured. There are many things that I can't handle personally. If you go to Lian City, I'll be relieved. Why don't you let Xiao Huan stay by my side to help?" Before she finished speaking, Jean Ling's face changed. "Little Princess Fei, you can't go back on your words like this." With that, Jean Ling knew that she had said something wrong. She was a little annoyed. Chu Qingyan laughed loudly. She had an idea. All right, I'm just teasing you. You can leave. I'll leave the flower garden to you guys." Jean Ling's face heated up. Hearing this, she immediately bowed as if she had been pardoned. Outside the door, Huo Ling was passing by the courtyard. When he saw Jean Ling, he couldn't help but ask curiously, "I say, Jean Ling, why is your face so red? Are you not feeling well?" Jean Ling mumbled perfunctorily, then quickly left. Huo Ling looked hesitantly at Jean Ling's fleeing appearance, and was even more surprised. Was there a dog chasing after her? Why did she run so fast? 2 days later, Cheng Yanluo and Jinling set off. Because Chu Qingyan was injured and bedridden, it was inconvenient for her to move around. She could only ask Xining to send her off. After they left, Xining carried the bowl of medicine into the house. Chu Qingyan heard her sigh and say, I don't know how long it will take for me to return from this trip. I miss Sister Xiaohuan and Lady Cheng. Chu Qingyan glanced at her. They're not far away. If you want to go with them, it's not too late. When Xining heard this, she immediately ran to the bedside to express her loyalty. Although that's what I said, this servant is even more reluctant to part with Master Ah. Chu Qingyan took the opportunity to pinch her little face and scolded jokingly. I thought I raised an ingrate. I'm not an ingrate, I'm an obedient rabbit. Xining took advantage of the situation. Chu Qingyan was amused by her and had no choice but to say, I originally planned to let you go out to gain experience. After all, you have to help look after my business in the future. Unfortunately, Jin Xian was injured and couldn't leave his side. If I send you out, I will be suspected of breaking up an affectionate couple. When she heard the first part, Xining's face paled. However, when she heard the second part, her cheeks flushed red. She stomped her feet and said angrily, If Master says this again, this servant will ignore you in the future. She didn't even have a chance to reply before this little girl threw up. She placed the bowl of medicine on the small table in front of the bed, and ran off without a trace. She shook her head and laughed. Was she embarrassed because her thoughts were exposed? However, it wasn't easy for her to smash the bowl without spilling a single drop. She picked up the bowl of medicine and took a sip, but her face was full of bitterness. How many Coptis Chinensis had been added? Could it be that after Yanluo left, Ethereal was using his position to take revenge? I'm going to complain to Big Ice Block. Xining ran out of the courtyard and bumped into Hualing. He couldn't help but be puzzled. Did many people catch a cold and have a fever on this warm spring day? Why was her face so red? When Chu Qingyan finished drinking the medicine with a frown, a person walked into the room with heavy steps. Chu Qingyan heard the sound and turned around. When she saw who it was, she casually said, Are you here to deliver Yanluo? They left early in the morning. Hua Xiaoli was wearing a thin dark green robe today. Inside, she was wearing a pure white robe. Green and white contrasted, making her look elegant and elegant. It was a pity that there was a bit of indignation on her face. I know they left and I bumped into them on the way. I came to find you for something else. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. Could it be that something happened in the store? Hua Xiaoli nodded and sat down on the chair in front of the bed. Actually, the business has been very good recently. Because the trial results were very good. Word of mouth spread like wildfire. There are more and more people fighting to be the first to buy it. However, our quantity is limited, so it was sold out in a single morning. Chu Qingyan nodded. Isn't that very good? In terms of sales and fame, it is indeed very good, but there is one thing that is very strange. When she said this, a resentful expression appeared on Hua Xiaoli's face. Chen Jiawang sent people to buy many of our products. I feel that his intentions are unclear. Maybe he feels that our products are good, and wants to buy them for the people around him to use. Seeing that her good friend was angry, Chu Qingyan guessed in a positive direction, and wanted to comfort her. No, after competing for so many years, how could I not understand his personality? He is not the kind of person who would buy things to do favors. I'm worried that he is researching the composition of our products, and then imitating them. Hua Xiaoli gave a snort. Chu Qingyan slightly raised her brows. She did not say anything as she pondered in her heart. Hua Xiaoli continued, They have a very powerful incense-making team on hand. If they develop the same products as ours and sell them, it will be a very big blow to our business. Hearing the worry behind Hua Xiaoli's anger, Chu Qingyan could not help but show her a comforting smile. Then, she leaned against the bed wall, and found a comfortable position for herself to nestle. Then she said unhurriedly, The development of a continuation product is not something that can be imitated. It is unique to me. Chu Qingyan smiled. But we can't deny that there will be people with special abilities who can really make an identical product based on the finished product. However, a genuine product is a genuine product, and a pirated product is a pirated product. A pirated product will never surpass a pirated product. This is why I wanted to create a continuation brand before. It is to let the power of the brand make customers recognize this brand. When they buy our products, not only do they buy quality and service, but also comfort and dignity. Chu Qingyan's words made Hua Xiaoli feel enlightened. She smiled and gave a thumbs up. Qingyan, I really underestimated you. It turns out that you have a plan for every step you took. Don't praise me like that. This is called preparing for a rainy day. I just take into account what may happen in the future. I want customers to feel that it is an honor to buy a genuine product. In modern times, imitations were the norm. Also, books written by authors would be stolen by pirated literature websites. As long as readers could identify where the author wrote the original, the author's efforts would not go to waste. That was why she thought so much about it. But, do you still have a trick up your sleeve? Hua Xiaoli was keenly aware of the hidden meaning in her words. Chapter 754. Chu Qingyan was stunned and then laughed out loud. You're so smart. You can even guess that. Hua Xiao's gloominess was swept away and she smiled. I'm not the young master of the Hua family for nothing. I'm also a real talent, okay? Chu Qingyan shook her head and then confessed. I was going to tell you this when the flower garden was built and the supply chain was formed, but it doesn't matter now. Summer will arrive in 2 months. By then, I plan to launch a new continuation of the brand's product line. It's targeted at the hot weather, such as moisturizing and preventing makeup from falling off easily. The idea was still floating in my mind, but I had nothing to do these 2 days, so I wrote it down and handed it over to Yanluo to develop. When the goods are delivered, the new product line will be launched. After hearing this, Hua Xiao was unusually surprised. She clicked her tongue. When the goods are delivered, I'll have to try them first. Chu Qingyan then remembered that the handsome young man in front of her was also a beauty. She couldn't help but push him. When will you change into women's clothes for me to see? What's there to see? Hua Xiao patted her sleeves and said valiantly. It's more convenient to wear men's clothes. Then why are you wearing rouge and face powder? Chu Qingyan threatened her with a look that said, if you don't wear it for me to see, I won't give you the new products. Hua Xiao immediately flattered her. After all, every girl likes to be beautiful, right? Chu Qingyan let her go. She knew that she was used to wearing men's clothes, but she was still quite curious. I don't know who you'll dress up for in the future. Hua Xiao said indifferently. You can dress up for your husband. Don't drag me into it. Chu Qingyan laughed. I don't need to dress up for Big Ice Cube. In his eyes, even if I'm plain soup noodles, he'll think that I'm the most beautiful person he's ever seen. Hua Xiao was a little surprised by her words, but seeing that she wasn't bashful, she knew that this was her temperament and her complete trust in the cold Su Xiao. Hua Xiao couldn't help but tease her. I understand. This is called beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Even a sparrow is a phoenix in the eyes of the one you love. Chu Qingyan then felt embarrassed. She didn't want to let her watch a good show, so she found a topic to change, but she didn't expect this topic to hit the nail on the head. By the way, I haven't asked you why did you quarrel with Lord Lin last time? He's a gentleman. How did he offend you? Chu Qingyan felt that she would not be so calculative with someone for no reason. However, if this person was Lin Fengyi, it was a little strange. It would have been better if she hadn't mentioned this person. The moment she did, Hua Xiao's hair stood on end. She no longer looked like a smiling tiger. Don't mention this person to me. He's a miser who specializes in bullying the weak. Miser. I've heard Big Ice Cube mention this before. Isn't it a compliment for being untainted? How did it become a crime when it came out of your mouth? And bullying the weak. Are you weak? Chu Qingyan asked with a smile. Hua Xiao snorted twice. I don't want to talk to you. Anyway, I just think that he's a black-hearted person. From the beginning to the end, he's dark and swarthy. Chu Qingyan was puzzled. I think Lord Lin is quite fair. Hua Xiao's mouth twitched. She was about to be angered to death by this teammate. Anyway, you're not allowed to mention him in the future. I'll bite you every time I see him. She remembered that the last time she met him here, he said that girls should be more refined. How was she not refined? She was recognized as a gentle person. Every time, she was at a disadvantage because of him. Xiao was so angry. Chu Qingyan could see that Lin Fengyi was her firecracker. Although she was surprised, she didn't mention him again. The two of them chatted for a while more. Xiao was called away by her manservant. He said that something had happened in some shop, and she had to go settle it. She then took her leave. After Xiao left, Xining walked in and asked with a smile, "Master, young Master Hua brought a lot of tonics over. There are 2 stalks of 100-year-old ginseng. This servant was wondering if I should stew some for you and His Highness to nourish your body." Chu Qingyan was a little touched. Every time Xiao came, she would bring all kinds of tonics. It was as if she didn't need to spend money to send them in. She thought for a while and said, "I've been negligent these 2 days. Make some ginseng soup for His Highness. Then let the steward go to the storeroom to pick some tonics. Let the kitchen make some for the injured Xiao cavalry. Ask them what they like to eat and order the kitchen to make it. If there's not enough manpower, spend some time to hire a few servants and add more manpower." Xining hurriedly nodded. "Master is so thoughtful. This servant will go down and give the orders." Chu Qingyan called out to her, "Don't forget to make some delicious food for your Jin Xian. He lost a lot of blood this time." Xining's face was as red as a sunset. She stomped her feet and turned to leave, leaving Chu Qingyan alone overjoyed. When Xiaosu walked in, he heard her laughter. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. "What is it that makes you laugh so happily without caring about your wounds?" Hearing this voice, Chu Qingyan's smile widened. She watched him walk over and smiled. "Just now, I was teasing Xining. I also teased her and Jin Xian." Hearing her talk about teasing the people around her so openly, Xiaosu was a little helpless. "You're already so old, but you're still like a child. It's so hard to be an adult. It's not as free as being a child. Besides, wouldn't you dote on me more and take care of me more?" She smiled contentedly. Xiaosu raised his brows. "This sounds like you're accusing this prince of not doting on you and not taking care of you these past few years?" When Chu Qingyan heard this, she was so happy that she blurted out without thinking. She immediately chuckled. "I didn't say that. You're imagining it yourself." Xiaosu watched her finish drinking the medicine bowl before sitting down. He reached out to pinch her little nose and said dotingly, "No matter how big your mentality is, I will still treat you the same as before." When Chu Qingyan heard this, she stared at him in a daze. She stared at him without blinking, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Xiaosu saw that she didn't look happy and was instead stunned. He was a little confused. Could it be that he said something wrong? Chu Qingyan murmured, "Big Ice Cube, have you been feeling unwell recently?" It was rare for him to put down his pride and say something so considerate, but she actually gave him such a look. His face couldn't help but darken. What kind of reaction is this? Chu Qingyan didn't hear the strangeness in his voice and was a little worried. "Don't tell me you're having a fever that damaged your brain? You don't seem like the kind of person who would say sweet words. Why does it seem like your mouth has been smeared with honey recently?" Xiaosu's eyes twitched. After he had the retainers submit their answers, he had worked overnight to sort them out. Although there were many ways to treat his wife that made his scalp tingle, he had tried his best to choose the most appropriate way. He never thought that he would be disliked by the little fellow and even suspect that he was sick. He had to consider if he should keep those retainers. Chapter 755. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she saw that the big ice block was just staring at her in a daze without any reaction. She was even more certain that the big ice block was sick. She quickly raised her hand to touch his forehead to check his temperature, but she didn't expect him to push her hand away. "I don't have a fever." After saying that, Xiaosu complained, "No, I think I really do have a fever. That's why I'm saying all this nonsense to you." After saying that, Xiaosu felt that he needed to calm down. As soon as he got up, someone tugged at his sleeve. He didn't want to lower his head, because he was a dignified lord. Going to this extent for her had already exceeded his status. Or rather, for many men it was shocking. At that moment he remembered his status. More importantly, if he lowered his head, he would see her reluctant eyes. He didn't want to compromise again. Don't be in a hurry to leave. Talk to me. Otherwise, you'll be busy with work again and I won't see you for the whole day. Chu Qingyan realized that her big ice block wasn't sick at all. Instead, he was so angry at her words that he turned to leave. She didn't know what she had said wrong, but it was always right to give in. As soon as he heard her soft pleading voice, Xiao knew that he had fallen for her for the rest of his life. Forget it. He turned around, put one hand on her shoulder, and lifted her chin with the other. He didn't give her time to react before he covered her. Chu Qingyan didn't expect him to suddenly do this, but when he leaned over, she obediently closed her eyes. This feeling came suddenly and intensely. Chu Qingyan couldn't take it anymore as her entire body leaned against him. His palm slid down her round shoulders and landed on her waist. Then he abruptly pulled her closer. His lips and teeth swept across her territory as if he was punishing her, but also seemed to be announcing something. In any case, it was like a violent storm. She only felt that her mind was blank. Messy emotions and surging emotions covered all her thoughts. She could only cling to the person in front of her. She felt like she was drifting in the vast sea, and he was her only driftwood that she could only hold on tightly. Xiao couldn't help but soften his brows when he saw the woman in his arms relying wholeheartedly on him. After everything calmed down, Chu Qingyan leaned into his arms, unable to stop feeling embarrassed and angry. Your arm is injured and you don't know how to control yourself. Xiao stroked her long hair and said, I know what I'm doing, and I won't hurt you. Just now, he had carefully avoided touching her wound. Moreover, how could he bear to see her hurt when she was the most important person in his heart? Chu Qingyan snorted. Since the big ice block had said so, she could only let him be. Later, Chu Qingyan realized that ever since she got together with Big Ice Cube, she seemed to have become more and more thick-skinned. She could accept his intimacy at any time. After they got together, Big Ice Cube liked to hug and caress her more and more when they were alone. Chu Qingyan broke out in a cold sweat for him when she heard that men of his age were like wolves and tigers. Fortunately, he was always able to stop at the critical moment, otherwise, she didn't dare to think about it anymore as her face heated up. Xiao didn't know what the person in his arms was thinking about when she suddenly became so quiet. He stroked her hair gently, his chin resting on her head that was slightly curled up from lying down for the past 2 days, and asked casually, You don't like me saying those words? Chu Qingyan came back to her senses. She was still a little dazed when she heard what he said. She thought about how she had almost angered the big ice cube just now. She immediately thought about the scene just now and carefully touched it. Finally, there was light. Big Ice Cube, it's not that I don't like it, it's just... When she said this, she didn't know how to continue. It's just what? Xiao frowned. It doesn't feel like something you would normally say. She pursed her lips. Didn't you say before that you wanted me to pass your test? What did you forget? Or you don't like this method? Xiao asked with a straight face. But who would have guessed that his mood right now was in turmoil for the first time? It was like he had learned how to write for the first time and couldn't wait to show it to his imperial mother to see if she would like it. But this time, there was a different feeling. It was like, ah? Chu Qingyan's eyes widened. Humph. It felt like this little fellow had forgotten. Then he had spent so many days organizing and staying up late to study and figure it out. Wasn't he feeding an ingrate? Chu Qingyan finally remembered that in the carriage, after the two of them had openly expressed their feelings for the first time, she didn't want Big Ice Cube to think that she was a casual person, so she had left a difficult question to test him. She didn't think that she would completely forget about it, but he had wholeheartedly remembered it and wanted to give her the best answer. But hearing this snort now, different from before, Chu Qingyan raised her head. The first thing she saw was Big Ice Cube's clean and beautiful chin. Then she looked away and saw his earlobe. And it was a little red. She smiled foolishly. Big Ice Cube, you're shy. Quickly lower your head and let me see if your face is red. Xiao's body stiffened and his cheeks heated up. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. I was talking to you properly, but you're talking to the ends of the earth. You're my god. Quickly let me see if the sky is filled with rosy clouds. She didn't give up. It was rare to see Big Ice Cube being shy, so how could she let it go so easily? Thus, she struggled to get up and see what was going on. This was a rare encounter, and she didn't know when she would see him again. Xiao Su didn't think that she would have such thoughts. Hearing this, he immediately clamped down on her hands and tried to avoid her injury. But once she made up her mind, she wouldn't settle down. It really gave him a headache. He suddenly realized that he was reaping what he sowed. With this struggle, she accidentally pulled on the wound on her chest. Chu Qingyan showed a pained expression. Xiao Su felt that she suddenly settled down and couldn't help but frown. He thought that her wound was hurting, but he couldn't care less. He lowered his head and saw her pale face. He wanted to scold her harshly, but he couldn't bear to. In the end he said with pity, I told you not to move, but you insisted on making yourself uncomfortable. Let's see if you're in pain now. And when he lowered his head, Chu Qingyan saw the expression on his face. She couldn't help but grit her teeth in pain. She said proudly, Big Ice Cube, you're really blushing. Xiao Su didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was still concerned about this at this time. Stop fooling around. That faint blush, because of his worry, dissipated slightly. It was almost impossible to see clearly, but she seized the moment, and her eyes were already mesmerized. It was as if she was on top of a cold snowy mountain in Tianshan. The last rays of the setting sun poured down on the sparkling white snow, covered with a light veil of red. This was how the world's most stunning beauty was. It was so clean and clear that it was breathtaking. When the pain in her chest subsided, she blinked under his gaze. Suddenly, she reached out and held his face with both hands. While he was puzzled, she delivered herself to him. Chapter 756. How could she not understand his feelings for her? It was just that sometimes it was a little slow and she couldn't understand it all at once. But as long as she saw his worried eyes, she would feel as though something was pulling her closer to him. Then it would guide her and tell her that this person had the deepest feelings hidden in his heart. Xiao Su didn't want her to suddenly come closer. He only reacted when she took the initiative to invite him into her territory, when the two of them were pressed against each other. It was rare for her to take the initiative, so it would be impolite for him to refuse. Very quickly he took the initiative and turned the tables. He teased her until she was panting before reluctantly letting go of her. When they were leaning against each other, Chu Qingyan spoke first. Big Ice Cube, I think you're really cute. When a certain someone who had just had his fill heard this, his face was suddenly full of different colors. He narrowed his eyes. Cute? You think this word is suitable? There was a hint of threat in his tone. Chu Qingyan giggled and blinked mischievously. Big Ice Cube, you're really too cute. Is the punishment not enough? A dangerous aura was approaching. Chu Qingyan quickly put her hands on his chest to stop him from coming closer. She quickly smiled apologetically. Because I really like what you said just now. Xiao Su paused and looked at her to see if she was just brushing him off. Chu Qingyan struck while the iron was hot. She leaned her head on his chest and wrapped her arms around his waist. Her expression was full of dependence. Xiao Su didn't know what she was thinking, but the beauty throwing herself into his arms made his mood a lot better. Then he heard her laugh. Big Ice Cube, there's a mountain between a man and a woman. You've just taken the first step, so there's still a long way to go. Xiao Su's hand, which was about to be placed on her back, stopped in midair when he heard that. A helpless smile appeared on his lips. This little fellow always had a way to make his heart follow her around in circles, up and down, up and down, up and down. However, when he heard the slyness in her words, her shyness and her feigned calmness, his frown slowly dissipated. He hugged the person in his arms lovingly and pitifully. Sometimes, I really don't know what to do with you. He could not help but shake his head. Pamper me and dote on me, she boasted shamelessly. But when she said this, she didn't dare to look at the person in front of her. She buried her head in his arms, and the heat on her face was enough to fry an egg. Xiao Su smiled and did not tease her. Instead, he tightened his arms around her. When Hualing reported that a guest had arrived, Xiao Su finally let go of her. He raised his hand and tapped her nose, saying, "If you have nothing to do, then rest more. Don't think too much. That little head of yours can't hold so many things." Chu Qingyan laughed and nodded. After Xiao Su left, he ordered Xining to bring some books from his library. When Xining came back with the books, she couldn't help saying, "Master, His Highness already told you to rest properly. Why are you still reading such profound books?" Because Xining had been by her side since she was 10 years old, when she had free time, Chu Qingyan would teach her how to read and write. So it was not difficult for Xining to learn how to read. At this moment, Xining was holding a book about military strategies and formations. The other book was about various countries. Chu Qingyan reached out, and the two books were placed in front of her. She picked one and placed it on her knees. Then she tilted her head and smiled. You can't be content with the status quo and bite off more than you can chew. You can't stop moving forward just because you have someone you can rely on. When you like someone, you don't want him to be your shelter from the wind and rain, nor do you want yourself to be his weakness. I work hard and keep charging myself. It's not to be worthy of him, but to keep pace with him. When he succeeds, I'll be the first one to turn around and see him when he wants to share it. When he's in danger, I'll be the first one to reach out to him. When he's weak, I'll be the first one to embrace him. If I can't keep up with his footsteps, or if he can't find me when he needs me the most, no matter if we can still be together in the future, I will blame myself for my mistakes during that time." Saying this, Chu Qingyan sniffed, and then smiled brightly. "Xining, you will understand in the future." Xining stood there in a daze. She looked down at the book that was quietly and seriously flipped through. There was an indescribable resonance in her heart. "Master, this servant can understand." Because when standing next to Jin Xian, this servant can always feel the distant feeling from him. It is not because of Jin Xian's alienation, but because of the noble aura that comes from his bones. So this servant also wants to be like Master and work hard. To be a woman worthy of him. Because Xining understood very early on, a long time later, when she saw the immortal couple standing at the top of the world, she felt joy and pride for them from the bottom of her heart. At this time, Lin Fingyi had been sitting in the study for a while. When he saw the person who walked in, he couldn't help but smile. "You are willing to come out of the land of tenderness? What do you want to say now?" Xiao Su glanced at him before walking to the seat of honor, and lifting his robe to sit down. As soon as he entered, Lin Fingyi felt a completely different aura from his good friend. Now that he said this, his good friend retracted his rare tenderness and the corners of his eyes curved slightly. "It seems that I came at the wrong time." Xiao Su was too lazy to pay attention to him. "Take care. I won't see you out." Lin Fingyi laughed. "You can't take a joke?" "Oh." Xiao Su looked at him with slight interest and said faintly, "That flower girl from last time, do you have any relationship with her?" When Lin Fingyi heard this, the smile on his face disappeared. "I don't have any relationship with her." Don't casually make personal attacks just to change the topic. Xiao Su hesitated. "Is that so?" This prince's good friend, who usually doesn't reveal his true nature, is always gentle and courteous no matter if he is facing evil officials, honest officials, or good citizens. However, he rarely revealed his true nature 2 days ago. The other party is even a young girl. This really makes this prince curious. Could it be that our humble and gentle official Lin has a change of personality? When Lin Fingyi heard this, he was momentarily stunned. When Xiao Su saw his strange expression, he knew that he had caught his weak spot. He picked up his tea and calmly sipped it. After a while, Lin Fingyi's expression returned to normal, as if the person who was in a daze just now was not him. The two of them tacitly started to talk about today's official business. Between good friends, there was no need for unnecessary explanations and concealment. "Why did you specially come to look for me today?" Xiao Su took the initiative to ask. When Lin Fingyi heard this, the corners of his lips curled up and a sly smile flashed across his eyes. "I came to talk to you about compensation." "Compensation?" Xiao Su frowned. "Don't forget that a few days ago, you burned down a large forest in the east. Chapter 757. Hearing his good friend's words, Xiao raised his eyebrows. Are you sure that I was the one who set the fire? So I should be the one to bear the loss. Isn't that the case? Lin Fengyi retorted. Xiao chuckled. Do you have witnesses? Do you have material evidence? Lin Fengyi was speechless. If you don't have evidence, then there's nothing I can do. Xiao shrugged. Lin Fengyi was speechless. In the end, he could only laugh and shake his head. To be honest, I was just joking with you. I didn't expect you to turn the tables on me. Indeed, one is marked by the company one keeps. Your wife is doing very well in Jiangnan now. If she wasn't smart, she wouldn't be able to do so well. She has been by your side for so many years. I can see that you have been assimilated by her craftiness. Xiao felt that something was amiss. Are you doubting my intelligence? Lin Fengyi smiled apologetically. I wouldn't dare. You are a young talent. No one would dare to doubt you. Xiao didn't reply. He just looked at him coldly. Lin Fengyi had trained himself to be calm and composed in the officialdom. Being stared at by his good friend, he was even more calm. Oh, you're really giving me a hard time? Lin Fengyi deliberately twisted his words and complained that he was wronged. Xiao face-bombed. This Lin Fengyi would only act so shamelessly in front of him. Although he and Ling Feng gave off different vibes on the surface, at least Ling Feng gave off the same vibe on the surface. On the other hand, Lin Fengyi appeared to be a gentleman on the surface, but behind his back, he could make people's jaws drop. Using Ling Feng's evaluation after suffering losses from him in the past, he was extremely sinister. In the eyes of the people of Jiangnan, these two words were not just a little bit out of place on the magistrate, who was so just and strict. Say it. What's the matter? Xiao didn't want to waste any more time with him. He simply threw out the main topic. All right, I'm just teasing you. It's just that you exude an aura that makes people envious. A single dog like me can't stand it. Lin Fengyi admitted it openly. Then he continued. In the past few days, I've heard a lot about your family's crazy buying spree in Jiangnan. Many people are talking about continuing the product. Luckily, I don't have any women in my manor, otherwise, I would be bankrupt. You don't know how many officials under me have started to tighten their belts to live. All of them have been squandered by their wives and daughters. At this moment, I suddenly feel that it's not bad to be alone. I don't have to eat tofu and salted vegetables for 3 meals, Lin Fengyi sneered. When Lin Fengyi was about to bring up the main topic, Xiao suddenly asked, What product are you talking about? Lin Fengyi, who had been interrupted, was stunned at first. Then he subconsciously replied, Continuation. This is the name that your little princess consort came up with. At first, it sounds quite strange, but after thinking about the concept of the product, it's quite compatible. I have to say the creativity is quite good. Xiao didn't hear what he said next. His whole heart was on that one word. Continuing? Continuing. Continuing. Unknowingly, a smile appeared at the corners of his eyes and mouth. His facial features had always been elegant and upright. Now that he was smiling sincerely, his entire face seemed to be emitting a dazzling light that no one dared to look directly at. Lin Fengyi looked up. He was slightly surprised when he saw this. Why did his good friend suddenly look like this? He had never seen him look like this before. Did he say something just now? Lin Feng pondered. Could it be that there was something special about this name? Aren't they just 2 very common words? Wait, continuing? A look of understanding flashed across his eyes. He looked deeply at his good friend in front of him. So it was like that. That little girl was indeed very intelligent. At the same time, he could tell that she was sincere to Xiao. Otherwise, why would she miss him so much? Xiao's expression only changed for a moment. He quickly retracted his strange emotions. He didn't take it to heart that he lost his composure in front of his good friend. Continue with your business. Once he returned to the main topic, his expression became serious. Lin Fengyi suddenly felt that he had been hit in the heart by the public display of affection. But what could he say now? He could only sigh in his heart and continue. Although your young princess consort is reliable in her work, the product this time can be said to be unconventional. Furthermore, the way she promoted it. Lin Fengyi paused as a faint look of admiration appeared in his eyes. It is unheard of and unseen. Even I, as a man, have heard of a lot of news and promotions. I cannot deny that Qingyan has a business acumen. But, just say it. Xiao Su could hear that there was something wrong with his praise. Lin Fengyi's smile was like the spring wind and rain, careless and slightly warm. But the words he said were direct and cruel. I have to tell you about the Jiangnan market. Even though I've been here for at least a year, it's still hard for me to fully immerse myself in this business circle. Many of them are century-old brands. More of them are related to the high officials and nobles of the capital. Don't look at how the market is thriving and harmonious. Once it affects the interests of others, the complicated relationships are enough to make people suffer. If it's light, they'll lose money to avoid disaster, and can make a comeback in the future. If it's heavy, they'll lose everything and never be able to make a comeback. So you mean? Xiao Su looked at him with a frown. Lin Fengyi smiled faintly, but his tone was somewhat disapproving. Qingyan acted a little too hastily this time, and was too high profile. She might have become a thorn in the side of many people. Don't look at how most people in Jiangnan are gentle and kind on the surface. That's because you haven't touched their interests. Once you do, it won't be as simple as biting back at you. So you might have to remind her to be more careful. Xiao Su understood. His good friend was an official in Jiangnan. Moreover, he usually had few desires. For him to specially remind him today was already giving him preferential treatment. When Ayan was in this industry, she discussed it with me. I support her approach. Her products are too unique. Even if she doesn't strongly promote them, she'll still become the focus of attention in Jiangnan. So she might as well amaze everyone from the start. Xiao Su's explanation didn't surprise Lin Fengyi at all. He chuckled. It's fine if you don't do anything, but amaze everyone with a single brilliant feat. It's indeed your style of doing things. Qingyan has been by your side for so long. It's no wonder she's been influenced by your style of doing things. Thank you for the compliment. Xiao Su accepted this compliment without any pressure. Lin Fengyi choked. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In the end, he could only shake his head. Qingyan dares to be in the limelight in Jiangnan right from the start. I think it's all because you've spoiled her. Xiao Su brushed his sleeves and said in a very normal tone. If I don't spoil my own woman, who else can I spoil? Chapter 758. If I don't spoil my own woman, who else can I spoil? You think I'll spoil you? You're thinking too much. It's rare for me to spoil someone in my life, and I'll only spoil this one person. I might as well let her do whatever she wants. Even if she messes up the sky, I'll help her clean it up. Lin Fengyi's eyes widened. He rarely lost his composure, but he was still stunned by his good friend's straightforward display of his true feelings. Xiao Su turned around after he finished speaking. He saw his good friend looking straight at him without changing his expression, and suddenly smiled. Fengyi, you might find it unbelievable now, but one day, you'll meet such a person. Perhaps, you'll be able to understand how I feel right now. If it was someone else, Xiao Su wouldn't have said these words. However, the person in front of him wasn't someone else. He was also one of the only two close friends he had in his life. The little fellow had said that if there was joy, he should share it. If there was difficulty, he should share it. Only then could he let the people close to him become closer. This was what the little fellow had taught him. Now he was putting this into action bit by bit. Lin Fengyi was suddenly able to understand the feelings he wanted to share with him from the words he said. He put away his shocked expression, suddenly holding his forehead and sighing heavily. Xiao Su, ever since that enlightened you, I've realized that you've become more and more fond of showing off your affection in front of me. Don't you think this is very unkind to your friends? Lin Fengyi had a headache over this phenomenon, especially for someone like him who didn't have anyone by his side who cared about him. It was a kind of open and above-board torture. Xiao Su didn't take his friend's complaint seriously. Instead, he had an idea. You're not young anymore. It's time for you to get married. Ling Feng, you and I, there are 3 of us. I'm slightly older than you. Your parents have already passed away. As the saying goes, an elder brother is like a father. If you have someone you like, you can talk to Ayan. She'll help you. In the end, why did it become Qingyan? The corner of Lin Fengyi's mouth twitched. From what he heard just now, he thought that Xiao Su would help him solve the problem. He didn't expect that Chu Qingyan would jump out in the end. She was indeed a person who didn't play by the rules. Xiao Su said matter-of-factly. As the saying goes, the eldest sister-in-law is like a mother, so… Stop. Lin Fengyi felt the headache coming back. Xiao Su, don't forget how old Qingyan is. How much older am I than her? Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Why? Don't tell me you don't acknowledge her identity. It's not a question of whether I admit it or not, okay? At the thought of Qingyan's appearance and the fact that the eldest sister-in-law was like a mother, Lin Fengyi suddenly had the misconception that he had made bad friends. Let's talk about this after you two get married. Nothing is set in stone yet. Don't put the blame on me first. Lin Fengyi finally found his eloquence as an official. Let's talk about it later. At the mention of this matter, Xiao Su was silent, which was rare. Lin Fengyi saw this and thought that he had poked his sore spot. He couldn't help but ask, speaking of which, Qingyan is already 15. Your marriage should be on the agenda soon, right? Xiao Su was silent for a while. He wanted to directly ignore this question, but his good friend's gaze was fixed on him. Then he slightly averted his gaze. There are still 3 months before her coming-of-age ceremony. You plan to set the date when she comes of age? Lin Fengyi smiled slightly. He had guessed correctly. It was rare to see him shy. Xiao Su didn't deny it. Actually, there's no difference in time. But I want to be serious because this is a matter of a lifetime for me and her. Tsk. I think it's because you haven't settled little Qingyan yet, so you still need 3 months as a buffer. How can you break the distance between two people so quickly and get married immediately? Although he wished him well in his heart, he still spoke the truth as a good friend. Xiao Su's fingers lightly tapped on the table. He looked a little absent-minded. He also knew that he was anxious. He had to give the little fellow some time to get used to the two of them being together. However, he was afraid that there wouldn't be enough time. Lin Fengyi also seemed to have thought of something. He slightly restrained the teasing expression on his face. He understood what he was worried about. Yesterday, I also received the news that the fourth prince is leading the army into battle. He's still lacking experience. These days, he's basically losing 9 out of 10 battles. I'm afraid that he won't be able to last through this summer. After Lin Fengyi finished speaking, he saw that his good friend didn't look surprised at all. He knew that he had received the news long ago. He had the most extensive information network in his hands. Xiao Su, if that day really comes, what do you plan to do? At this moment, he was asking this question as a good friend. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. I can't avoid it. You know that I hate hiding the most. Xiao Su suddenly stood up and walked to the window. He gazed into the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. When Lin Fengyi saw this, he also stood up and slowly walked to his side. Then he followed his line of sight and saw a mountain in the distance with smoke rising in spirals. He smiled slightly and said, "Thousands of miles of mountains and rivers, magnificent and vast. No one would be unmoved. High up in the sky, enjoying the respect and fear of the world. At the same time, bearing the loneliness of being at the top," Xiao Su said lightly with a mocking tone. Lin Fengyi understood and turned to look at him. An unknown emotion surfaced in his eyes. He said in a neither deep nor shallow tone, "Is that why you gave up when you had the chance back then?" He didn't specify what it was, but Xiao Su understood tacitly. His gaze had been looking into the distance. Hearing this, his lips curled slightly. "Fengyi, I'm different from them. When I need to do my best for the country, I won't hesitate. But if I have to step on bones and stain my hands with blood to reach that position, I can't do it. I'm ruthless, but I'm not heartless." Lin Fengyi turned and leaned against the window. He smiled like a lotus at night. "I know, so I'm not surprised. Back then, when you could have become the crown prince, you chose to go to the border." Xiao Su was silent. At that time, it wasn't that he didn't want to be the crown prince, but that he couldn't. Because he could imagine that after he inherited the position of crown prince, His imperial mother would increase the power of the Liang family. At the same time, his imperial father would also increase his efforts to suppress the factions that supported him and weaken the power of the Liang family. Since he could foresee the consequences, why not leave the vortex early? Sometimes advancing didn't mean winning. Sometimes retreating was the only way to break out of the situation. Back then, he used 3 years to leave the capital in exchange for the peace of the Liang family and the faction that supported him. That was why many people said that he had wasted his chance. But only he knew what he had truly gained. Bones and blood are things that must be experienced. Unless there's peace in the world. Lin Fengyi said slowly. I understand. So what if someone puts a knife on Qingyan's neck to force you? As soon as Lin Fengyi finished speaking, Xiao Su's eyes suddenly narrowed. Chapter 759. What if someone uses Qingyan to force you? Lin Fengyi thought that he didn't hear him, so he looked into his eyes and asked again. Because this was not impossible. When Xiao Su and Qingyan first arrived in Jiangnan, although he didn't pay special attention to them, it didn't mean that he didn't know what had happened to Qingyan. Once, Empress Liang had planned to use Qingyan to force her son to submit. Fortunately, Qingyan managed to escape in the end. This matter was reported to him by one of his spies. She's not a weak girl who can't even trust a chicken, so she won't be easily threatened. Xiao Su said in a low voice. But from his tone, it was obvious that he was already considering this possibility. If there is a first, there will be a second. Xiao Su, it is easy to dodge an open spear, but hard to avoid a hidden arrow. Can you guarantee that there will be no accidents? Can you guarantee that you will be able to protect her at all times? Whether it is your father, mother, or your brothers, none of them are easy to get along with. Otherwise, how could you have left the capital and wandered around for 10 years? In the past, you were carefree and unrestrained, doing whatever you wanted. You didn't have to worry about your future at all. But Lin Fengyi's eyes were heavy, and his tone was unusually solemn. Now Qingyan is your weakness. You are in trouble. As soon as he finished speaking, the room fell silent. An indescribable atmosphere surged between the two of them. Xiao Su's fingers clasped on the wooden board by the window. He exerted a little force, and the red on his fingertips gradually faded to a pale white, just like his emotions at this moment. His good friend naturally had his reasons for saying this. Perhaps he had already sensed that something was wrong, so he specially came today to remind him. I understand. Xiao Su closed his eyes and replied. Lin Fengyi knew that his words were a little harsh. He couldn't help but straighten his body and relax. Xiao Su, do you still remember the agreement between the three of us? I remember. Xiao Su pondered for a moment and then nodded. Although it's not a chaotic world right now, it's just a facade of peace and prosperity. I believe that it won't be long before the situation becomes unstable. I really hope that our agreement can be fulfilled. Xiao Su smiled when he heard this. Since when have you become so sentimental? Lin Fengyi also smiled at him and said rather sadly. Ever since Ling Feng had a few children and you showed off your love in front of me every day, I was the only one left. Xiao Su couldn't help but pat him on the shoulder with a smile. What did you say? The two looked at each other and smiled. The sun was slowly approaching noon. Lin Fengyi remembered that he still had a lot of work to do before he left. He straightened his back and lowered his head to adjust the creases on his clothes. After smoothing them out, he spoke to the person in front of him in a serious tone. There's been some progress on the Lu family's salt smuggling. Tell me about it. Xiao Su said with a serious expression. 2 months later, they will have a big business deal. I've already sent people to keep an eye on them. Lend me a few people from your side, and try to catch them red-handed on the spot. When it came to serious matters, Lin Fengyi regained his fair and impartial manner. Okay. Xiao Su immediately agreed. Lin Fengyi patted him on the shoulder. I'm going to drag you into this again. I didn't expect them to be so bold. We're in the middle of a chaotic war. I won't stand by and do nothing, Xiao Su said resolutely. Hearing this, Lin Fengyi felt a sense of pity in his heart. He could understand what his good friend meant. When there was chaos on the outside, he had to pacify the people on the inside. He couldn't make any mistakes. Such a hero who cared about the world and the people. The world is going to change. Take care. Lin Fengyi squeezed his shoulder and left after saying this. No matter when, as a friend, I will always stand behind you. No matter if it's a prosperous time or a turbulent time. Xiao Su stood in front of the windowsill and watched his good friend's figure appear in front of him and then disappear on the cobblestone path. He couldn't help but raise his head and look at the blue sky. His good friend was right. Ayan was his Achilles heel. She was the bottom line that he couldn't touch. But there was one thing. Ayan was his Achilles heel, but she wasn't a burden. If that was the case, she wouldn't be her anymore. So, what if someone puts a knife on Qingyan and forces you? If such a day really came, he wouldn't be soft-hearted. When he thought of Ayan, his thoughts returned to the word continuation. Yan Heshu? He always knew that the little fellow had him in her heart. After thinking through this point, the depression that had accumulated in his heart slowly dissipated. It was time to see what the little fellow was doing. Xiao Su turned around and went out the door. At this time, Lin Fengyi hadn't left the palace yet. He was standing on the path in the bamboo forest and looking at the lavender garden in front of him. He suddenly remembered that a few days ago, Hualing suddenly said that he wanted to get some lavender back to plant. He didn't think that it was anything important, so he waved his hand and had the steward follow him. But when he saw the lavender, he couldn't help but twitch his eyes. It seemed that he had dug up most of his garden. No wonder the steward's expression was strange that day. It was a pity that he was too busy and didn't ask about it. Xiao Su's subordinates were the same as him. They were all a group of bandits. But when he thought about it, he smiled. This was probably the first time that Xiao Su had taken a woman by force. It really was a rare sight. He thought back to the conversation he had with his good friend in the room, and his heart suddenly relaxed. After so many years, Xiao Su would no longer be that patient prince who would retreat step by step, because there was one more person by his side. Someone once said that the best way for a person to become strong was to have someone they wanted to protect. The strength here wasn't the strength of one's ability, but the firmness of one's mind. The appearance of this little girl, Qingyan, was really good. The Emperor Emeritus had done a good thing. Lin Fengyi felt relaxed and stepped out of the residence. Sir, the prefectural magistrate sent someone over today. He said that he has something to discuss with you. If you have free time, you can come to the residence for a chat. When the subordinate waiting outside saw him come out, he immediately went up to welcome him. Lin Fengyi thought for a moment before saying, "Let's find a restaurant to take care of our lunch first before going." It turned out that it was already lunchtime, but Xiao Su didn't ask him to stay for lunch. He probably wanted to be lovey-dovey with his wife again. TSK, how unkind. Yes. The subordinate acknowledged. He didn't think that there was anything wrong with his master's order, because their master basically didn't eat at the official's residence and refused to entertain. Sir, do you want to take a carriage? As he spoke, the coachman had already brought the carriage over. Lin Fengyi shook his head. No, the weather is good today. I'll take a walk. At the same time, he could experience the people's mood. The subordinate immediately ordered the carriage to be taken down and followed closely behind his master. Isn't that person a miser? Someone gritted his teeth softly in his heart. Chapter 760. Young Master, you didn't see wrongly. That is Master Lin. The blue-clothed servant followed his master's line of sight and nodded after confirming. Let's go and take a look. The jade-green-robed youth's eyes rippled with interest. Young Master, this isn't very good. You still have to go to the shops in the south to check the accounts. The blue-clothed servant immediately looked at her nervously. Don't worry. Humans are made of iron and rice is made of steel. Let's fill our stomachs first. Seeing Lin Fengyi enter a stall, she immediately walked forward. Seeing this, the blue-clothed servant could only follow. These two people were none other than Xiao's master and servant. Just as Xiao was following them stealthily, Lin Fengyi and his subordinate were already seated in the shop. The stall owner in plain clothes came forward to greet them. What would the two guests like to eat? because these two people had an extraordinary bearing, especially this man with an outstanding face. The stall owner was even more enthusiastic. 2 bowls of wonton and a tray of vegetable buns. Lin Fengyi's subordinate, Li Hu, immediately said. The stall owner happily agreed. Xiao looked at this plain and ordinary stall, and thought that this miser was really stingy. He couldn't even bear to bring his subordinates to eat something good. However, she still secretly sneaked in, wanting to observe him from afar. Unfortunately, this stall was only so big. Moreover, Xiao's iconic men's clothing was basically recognized by everyone in Jiangnan. Therefore, "Oh, young Master Hua, you also came?" Seeing Xiao, the stall owner hurriedly greeted her. Xiao often came here to sit when she had nothing to do, so the stall owner recognized her at a glance. Xiao rolled her eyes. Couldn't this stall owner pretend that he didn't see her? At this time, she felt 2 gazes in front of her. She couldn't help but unwillingly put down the sleeve that was covering her face. After a few coughs, her face changed into a surprised expression of meeting friends from thousands of miles away. What a coincidence! Master Lin is also here. Lin Fengyi sized up the person in front of him and smiled faintly. What a coincidence! As soon as these 2 words came out, Xiao guiltily shifted his gaze. In the past, when the 2 of them met, they would always be at each other's throats. Of course, it was Xiao who took the initiative to declare war. However, at this moment, Xiao had a guilty conscience, which caused his momentum to weaken as soon as he appeared. Therefore, it gave people a feeling that he had given up. Her eyes accidentally caught a glimpse of Lin Fengyi's half-smile. Xiao immediately sensed that something was wrong. No, she couldn't lose before the battle. Lord Lin, do you like the desserts here too? Xiao came over and said with a smile. As the saying goes, don't hit a smiling person. Xiao always used this principle very thoroughly. Miss Hua, do you want to sit with me? It wasn't that Lin Fengyi couldn't tell that he was being followed. He originally wanted to let her go, but when he saw her rolling her eyes, he couldn't help but find it funny, so he took the initiative to invite her. Since Lord Lin has invited me so kindly, then I won't be polite. Xiao immediately sat down, as if he was afraid that the other party would go back on his word. Li Hu, who was sitting opposite Xiao, stared at him with wide eyes. Clearly, his lord was just being polite. Li Hu, order a few dishes for that little brother and treat him well. Lin Fengyi smiled at Li Hu. Li Hu understood tacitly and stood up to bring Ah Fu to another table. However, Ah Fu didn't dare to disobey. She only turned back to look at her master several times, afraid that she would cause trouble if she wasn't careful. Her cautious and fearful look pleased Lin Fengyi. I didn't expect Lord Lin to be so reasonable. Xiao looked at him and chuckled. Lin Fengyi drank his tea and smiled when he heard this. I'm afraid that Miss Hua and this official's conversation later will scare others. Xiao's mouth twitched. Was he just mocking her for speaking so harshly? What a miser! When the shop owner heard Xiao call him Lord Lin, he couldn't help but move closer to Ah Fu and ask about Lin Fengyi's identity. When he found out that he was the prefectural magistrate, he was shocked at first. Then, he called for his servant and daughter in the inner room to quickly prepare the food. Perhaps it was because so many high officials and nobles had come to the shop today. The simple and honest shop owner felt that their presence had brought light to his humble dwelling. He smiled even more happily and couldn't help but hum a song as he prepared the food. Originally, Xiao felt that it was unfair, but when she heard the shop owner's off-key singing, she couldn't help but purse her lips and smile. When Lin Fengyi drank his tea, he saw the peaceful smile on her face. His eyes were slightly dazed, but it was quickly diluted by the steam of the tea. This official is coming here for the first time. Judging from Miss Hua's appearance, you should be a regular customer. Lin Fengyi found a topic to talk about. When Xiao heard that he was answering her question, she subconsciously nodded. Then, she took a cup and poured tea for herself. I often pass by here. Their steamed buns are more authentic, and their tofu pudding is also not bad. Most importantly, it's comfortable. Lin Fengyi should be referring to the environment. Lin Fengyi looked around and felt that although the shop was small, it wasn't messy. It was clean and tidy, and it just so happened that he could see Mount Tai in the distance from the window. It made him feel relaxed and happy. Today he had only walked in casually. "Here you are, Lord Lin. Your steamed buns and wontons will be served later." The shop owner brought out a tray of steamed buns. Hua Xiaoli glanced at the steamed buns and sneered. "Lord Lin, these are all vegetarian dishes. Vegetarian dishes are good for the body. If you eat too much fish and meat, I'm afraid it's bad for the body." Lin Fingyi looked at her meaningfully. "I'm used to eating too much fish and meat." Hua Xiaoli slammed the table. "Boss, I want a tray of meat buns and pork and cabbage dumplings." When she finished speaking, she glanced at Lin Fingyi. "This lady wants to go against you." Lin Fingyi expressed that he was fine with it. "Miss Hua, do you want to try the vegetarian steamed buns?" Lin Fingyi asked in a friendly manner out of gentlemanly demeanor. Because she had ordered the steamed buns at the back, she could only watch helplessly as steam rose from the steamed buns. When she heard Lin Fingyi's question, Hua Xiaoli swallowed her saliva and shook her head. "I don't eat vegetarian dishes." When the busy shop owner heard this, he turned to look at Hua Xiaoli curiously. He didn't have the foresight to expose her. "Young Master Hua, you usually order vegetarian steamed buns when you come here. Aren't you eating them today?" Hua Xiaoli was speechless. This shop owner was too honest. Lin Fingyi chuckled. "If that's the case, then this official will eat first." Hua Xiaoli covered her face with her sleeve. How embarrassing. She had never lost so much face in front of him before. "The taste is indeed not bad." Lin Fingyi picked up a steamed bun with his chopsticks and took a gentle bite. He nodded and praised. After walking for an entire morning, Hua Xiaoli was already hungry. When she heard his words, she felt even hungrier. How infuriating. Wait a minute. Wasn't the purpose of her visit just now to teach him a lesson? How could she forget? Then she raised a wicked smile. Lin Fingyi, who had been observing her, suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Chapter 761. Hua Xiao clenched her fists under the table. Then, she stood up and leaned in Lin Fingyi's direction. Lin Fingyi didn't know what she was going to do, and was on guard. However, at this moment, a faint fragrance drifted into his nose, and he was a little absent-minded. At this moment, Hua Xiao didn't notice his abnormality, and didn't notice the two of them getting too close. Instead, she spoke as she worked. "Official Lin isn't from Jiangnan. Perhaps you don't know that we like to add some seasoning to the buns to make them more delicious." As she spoke, she had already taken the mustard from the table and poured it into the basket. After she finished speaking, the half bottle of mustard was almost empty. Lin Fingyi's gaze moved from her fair and tender side face to the buns. She really didn't hold back when pouring the mustard. "Official Lin, don't be polite with me. Quickly try it, quickly try it. It tastes really good." As soon as Hua Xiao sat down, she immediately tried her best to recommend it, and even pushed the steamer in front of him. She was very attentive. Lin Fingyi raised his eyebrows. Didn't anyone tell her that at this moment, she looked like a weasel paying respects to a chicken? However, he didn't know why, but under her bright and expectant eyes, he couldn't think of any words to refuse. Moreover, he seemed to want to see her arrogant expression after she got her way. After trying a mouthful, Lin Fingyi came back to his senses. The impact on his taste wasn't as great as the impact on his thoughts. Hua Xiao was originally waiting for him to choke and lose his poise. However, after waiting for a long time, she only saw him calmly eating the bun one mouthful at a time. Hua Xiao stared at him as if she had seen a ghost. "Miss Hua, the taste is really good. Do you want to try it?" Lin Fingyi saw her staring at him with an amused expression, and couldn't help but tease her. Hua Xiao didn't believe that he could eat such a disgusting bun. Could it be that it wasn't mustard? When she heard this, she picked up a pair of chopsticks and put it into her mouth. Lin Fingyi's lips curved into a smile. As soon as it entered her mouth, Hua Xiao's face scrunched up. Who said it was delicious? She saw a ghost. She really wanted to vomit. However, she was the one who had boasted just now. Since he had chosen this path, he had to finish it even if he had to kneel. She swallowed a mouthful with tears in her eyes, and then agreed with him with teary eyes, "Es delicious." After saying that, She immediately threw the bun to the side and decided not to eat it again. She was dying of thirst. Just as the thought flashed through his mind, someone handed him a cup of tea. Xiao immediately took it from Xiao's sleeve and gulped down a few mouthfuls to suppress the spiciness. Wait, water? After she finished drinking, she looked at the person in front of her with a guilty conscience. Then she smiled carelessly. Lin Fengyi didn't argue with her. At this time, the wontons were already served, so he didn't pay attention to her anymore because he had something important to deal with later. However, she had gone for wool and come home shorn. How could she take this lying down? Or rather, she could not swallow this mouthful of mustard, even though she had taken the initiative to do so. Just as she was racking her brains to think of a way to get revenge, she caught a glimpse of the young woman next to the counter staring at the person beside her like a love-struck fool. Xiao often came to eat here, so she recognized that this was the restaurant owner's daughter. At this time, the young woman dressed in pink seemed to have made up her mind. She turned and went into the kitchen. After a while, she came out with a bowl and walked directly to their table. "Sir, this is our restaurant's famous sweet tofu. You can try it." Her voice was so soft that it could be squeezed out of it. Her small face was bashful as she secretly glanced at Lin Fengyi. Xiao suddenly felt goosebumps all over her body. She immediately blinked, wanting to see how Lin Fengyi would respond. She saw Lin Fengyi calmly raise his head. His gaze was also very proper, and he didn't look around casually. "This one didn't order this sweet tofu. Miss, did you make a mistake?" When the young woman heard this gentle and mellow voice, 2 blushes floated up on her cheeks. She lowered her head even more. "This is a gift from this shop to you, sir. You are honest and clean in Jiangnan and uphold justice for the common people. We common people are very grateful to you. This is this official's duty." Lin Fengyi smiled faintly. Xiao saw that the young woman became even more bashful because of his smile. She couldn't help but scorn in her heart. What's the point of smiling so beautifully? Aha! However, seeing that Lin Fengyi still wanted to refuse, Xiao immediately reached out to stop Lin Fengyi. Under Lin Fengyi's puzzled expression, Xiao turned to the woman and said, "Miss, thank you for supporting our lord. We will accept this bowl of tofu." A disapproving gaze landed on Xiao. She became even more pleased with herself. She wanted to make you uncomfortable. She wanted to oppose you. The young woman originally wanted to retreat, but when she heard Xiao's words, she immediately agreed. Then, she put down the bowl and trotted away. When she stood still, she looked back and smiled shyly at Lin Fengyi. When Xiao saw this scene, she pursed her lips and snickered. Lin Fengyi looked at her indifferently. "When did this official become Miss Hua, sir?" Xiao smelled the displeasure in his words and felt even more delighted. If the enemy was unhappy, she would be happy. This bowl of tofu was specially sent up by a beauty. "Sir, you should be happy to receive her favor." Xiao pretended to be innocent and automatically ignored his question. Lin Fengyi saw the schadenfreude in her eyes. She was watching the show from the side just now. Don't think that he didn't know. So what? She laughed mischievously. "Sir Lin, you don't know, but this tofu beauty is famous on this street. Many people admire her." "So what? Tofu beauty isn't easily moved. She's usually cold to people. This is the first time I've seen her so passionate." "So what?" It was this sentence again. Lin Fengyi looked at her indifferently. Xiao choked. She originally wanted to tease him, but she couldn't say anything at this moment. She heard that Lin Fengyi didn't get close to women. Many people guessed that he was gay. She even bet 100 taels that he was gay. Could it be true? Then she would have profited. But after a few days, she was bedridden and couldn't get up. Her whole body was sore and weak. She pointed at a certain person who had eaten his fill and said in a trembling voice, "Who said that you're gay? You're just a fox wearing the skin of a gay, big bad wolf. Do you feel that losing 100 taels is a big loss?" A certain person leaned over and stole a kiss on her lips, smiling brightly. "What? How did you know that I placed a bet?" Compared to a certain person's sneak attack, this shocked her more. "As long as I want to know. Do you think there's any secret that can be hidden from my eyes?" She rolled her eyes. She had almost forgotten his identity. In Jiangnan, who didn't curry favor with him. It was probably because he saw that she had been opposing him, so there must be a long line of people snitching on her. At this moment, a certain person whispered in her ear, "But I'll let you know whether you've lost or gained." "What did you say, ugh?" Who would love to be flirted with and whispered in a soft voice. Chapter 762. Lin Fingyi finally saw that she had stopped, so he lowered his head and continued to eat the wontons. At this time, the restaurant owner also brought the food that Xiao ordered. The original restaurant owner rubbed the white cloth around his waist and wanted to say a few words, but no matter how bad his eyesight was, he could see that the atmosphere between the two was not right, so he immediately left. Since she had successfully angered Lin Fingyi, Xiao's mission was complete. When she happily prepared to eat, her eyes glanced at the greasy meat dumplings and the meat bun, and she suddenly lost her appetite. She actually did not like eating meat that much. What was called lifting a rock and smashing it on your own foot. That was her situation right now. She held the spoon and stirred, but she had no appetite at all. But she was too embarrassed to order more food. This would be admitting defeat in front of Lin Fingyi. Just as she was feeling conflicted, a bowl of tofu appeared in front of her. She looked up at him in confusion, but only saw Lin Fingyi eating with his head buried in his hair. "Since you made the decision to stay, you can finish it yourself." His tone was very calm. Xiao wanted to stubbornly refuse, but at this time, her stomach was already singing the empty fort stratagem. In the end, she silently brought it over. How could she fight without strength? She would talk about it after she was full. But later, Xiao regretted her decision very much. "Lin Fingyi, didn't you not get close to women? What are you doing?" She softened in his arms and opened her big watery eyes as she gritted her teeth. "Eating tofu." A certain person buried his head in eating. "You're shameless." She pushed him away and said angrily, "Didn't you owe me a bowl of tofu before? I'm just eating it bite by bite." Xiao's face turned red. If she had known earlier, she would not have bent over a bowl of tofu. It turned out that when the cold-faced miser was pure, he was like a vegetarian disciple who kept people 1,000 miles away. But when he seriously ate tofu, even she was afraid. Although Xiao had always been wearing men's clothes and her speech and actions were quite decent, she ate very elegantly. After all, she was from a big merchant in Jiangnan. When Lin Fingyi put down his chopsticks, he glanced at her and then looked away. At this time, the tofu beauty kept sneaking glances at him. Lin Fingyi remembered the words in the flower sleeve, smiled faintly, and then threw it to the back of his mind. Although the person beside her didn't say anything, Xiao could guess that he was waiting for her. She couldn't help but speed up her eating. In the end, she wiped her lips and wanted to say something, but Lin Fingyi had already taken out some money from his sleeve and placed it on the table. "Miss Hua, this official still has important matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first." With that, he stood up and left his seat. Xiao stared blankly at his departing figure, then turned back to look at the money he put down. It was just right, including the money for the bowl of tofu. When the shop owner came to clear the table, he said with a sigh, "This Lord Lin is really honest. The parents of the people." Hearing this, Xiao became strangely silent. After the two of them left, Fu immediately returned to her master's side. When she heard the shop owner's praise, she subconsciously looked at her master. But strangely, her master, who usually hated to be praised, didn't say a word. Could it be that her master was too full and hadn't reacted yet? "Lord, do you need this subordinate to help you buy some water?" Li Hu followed behind and thought for a moment before finally asking. Lin Fingyi's footsteps paused as he thought of the mustard bun. His throat was still a bit parched. "Amen." Li Hu sighed in relief and immediately turned to buy water. His lord disliked those strange smells the most, so his diet had always been light. Who knew that he would encounter the Hua family's young master, who didn't play by the rules, and even plotted against his lord? Just now, he almost thought that his lord was going to turn hostile, but in the end, his lord actually ate the mustard bun. It was simply a shock to him. But as expected of his wise and mighty lord, he was actually able to swallow it. Because of the discomfort in his throat, Lin Fengyi, who was waiting on the street, couldn't help but recall Xiao's shocked expression when he pushed the tofu over. He knew that he wasn't a soft-hearted person, but when he saw her awkward and sullen expression, he subconsciously pushed it over. When he came back to his senses, it was already too late. His mind suddenly flashed with Xiao Su's words today. Is that so? This prince's good friend, who usually doesn't reveal his true feelings, is always gentle and courteous no matter if he is facing evil officials, honest officials, or good citizens. But just a few days ago, he rarely revealed his true nature. The other party is even a young girl. This really makes this prince curious. Could it be that our humble and gentle Lord Lin has changed his personality? His good friend's words made Lin Fengyi suddenly remember that something was wrong with him recently. Logically speaking, he had always treated everyone and everything rationally and rarely did anything out of the ordinary. For example, when he encountered an assassination attempt a few days ago, he didn't show any emotion on his face, but he quietly dealt with the mastermind behind the scenes. Lin Fengyi narrowed his eyes slightly. If he wanted to go far on the path of an official, he had to abandon these emotions that were out of the ordinary. Thinking of this, he put one hand behind his back and his expression was somewhat calm. When Li Hu returned, his footsteps quickly returned to being calm and unhurried. A lifetime of marriage tied in a lifetime. The red string was messy, but still clear. 1,000 miles of marriage, tied by a single thread. When Lin Fengyi and his servants' silhouettes disappeared into the crowd, a white figure leisurely walked over. 2 golden boys and girls followed her on her left and right. Although they were half a step behind, if one looked carefully, one could see that the 2 of them were protecting the person in front of them. They avoided the passers-by and formed a small protective circle. Tanning, the place you mentioned before where the Shuexin lipstick appeared was here? The woman in white walking in front was wearing a bamboo hat. A white veil hung down to cover her face. Her appearance couldn't be seen clearly, but her voice was graceful and languid, like a willow branch slowly stretching its body in the spring sun. Her pure white clothes were embroidered with 1 or 2 jasmine flowers. At a glance, she looked fresh and beautiful. The girl on the left smiled and replied, "Our people said that they saw it here. The information is correct." The woman in white nodded slightly. Then the sound of pearls and jade colliding could be heard. Under the sunlight, through the thin white veil, it seemed like the blue pearls hidden inside could be seen. "It seems that the little girl back then was in Jiangnan," the woman in white said. The woman in white said. Her voice was very pleasant to the ears, and the listeners could almost imagine the faint smile on her face. Should be. After all, our people have searched for so long, and didn't see the lipstick again. I'm afraid only she has this thing. The boy on the right continued. I hope this trip to Jiangnan won't disappoint me. The woman in white's voice was very faint. Soon, the 3 figures disappeared into the crowd. Chapter 763. Time flew by. Half a month had passed since Yan Luo and the others left for Lianqing. Chu Qingyan had also been lying in bed for half a month. She felt as if grass was growing on her head. However, it wasn't easy for a broken bone to heal so quickly. After all, it would take 100 days to heal a broken bone. 100 days, 100 days. Therefore, under Ethereal's repeated orders and Xiao Su's exhortations, she could only lie in bed like this. Fortunately, her parents and little troublemaker often came to talk to her. Oh, and there was also a Tsundere gerfalcon. At this time, Bai Yutong and the others were staring at the gerfalcon. However, the gerfalcon didn't seem to care about them at all. Instead, it looked at little troublemaker warily. Little troublemaker lay next to Chu Qingyan's hand and looked very docile. However, it looked at the gerfalcon with a hostile gaze. Chu Qingyan was holding a book and watching the scene in front of her. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. When she laughed inadvertently, the gerfalcon immediately rolled its eyes. It slowly walked to the bedside like the king of Buddha Mountain and paid a routine visit. After it was done, it walked to the soft couch at the side and sat on it with difficulty. Then, it continued to look at little annoyance with hostility. Chu Qingyan didn't know whether to laugh or cry every time she saw its posture. However, she had to admit that the gerfalcon's recovery ability was very strong. It could survive such a serious injury and escape last time. After it came back, it lay in the house for a few days and started to run around again. For example, it came to report to her every day. Haha, Kai, Daddy is here for an animal convention. His voice reached her before he even arrived. Chu Qingyan could imagine her father walking in with a kitten in his left hand and a kitten in his right hand. Sure enough, Chu Machen's father walked in like an adorable kid. However, before the gerfalcon's gaze could reach them, the two kittens screamed and struggled to jump away. Her father only had time to look back and see the kittens disappear. Then he said to his daughter in disappointment, "Flower 1 and Flower 2 are so timid." As soon as he finished speaking, gerfalcon, glutinous rice ball, and the others sneered. In front of the Wolf King and Eagle King, it would be strange if they didn't piss their pants. Chu Qingyan held her forehead and said with a headache, "Father, there are hawks and wolves in the room. It would be strange if Hua and the others weren't afraid. Don't bring them in again, or they won't play with you." Mr. Chu nodded, then walked in and explained, "Daddy, I just want them to coexist peacefully and play together." Who knew that Floey 1 and Floey 2 were so afraid of Little Hai and Little Annoyance? Chu Qingyan shrugged. It can't be helped. The law of survival in the animal kingdom is that the strong and the weak are always different. Little Annoying, Glutinous Rice Ball, and the others. You're dreaming if you want the Wolf King clan to play with the cats. Gerfalcon. Foolish humans. Chu Qingyan's gaze fell on Glutinous Rice Ball, and the others who were playing with a small ball of string in the room. She still found it hard to believe. If Big Ice Cube hadn't told her that these were snow wolves, she would have thought that they were just ordinary dogs. She wouldn't have guessed that they had such a noble background. Snow wolves were cruel and arrogant by nature. This was the explanation she had read in ancient books. However, these few were rolling on the ground and playing with the string. What the hell was with them? This simply made her eyes pop out of their sockets. However, Chu Qingyan didn't know that these few were only like this in front of her. If they were in front of outsiders, they would be different. Therefore, in the quiet afternoon, Mr. Chu played around with the few animals. She read a book. Little Annoyance glared at gerfalcon, and gerfalcon glared at Little Annoyance. Glutinous Rice Ball, and the others were jumping around and playing. Sometimes, Chu Qingyan thought that this was the most peaceful time of her life. However, there were some people who were destined to live their lives in the midst of bloody battles. Sometimes, peace and tranquility were just a smokescreen before the storm. When Xiao walked into the room, he saw the big lanterns and small lanterns sitting, lying, or rolling around in his Ion's room as usual. His face instantly turned ugly. Little Annoyance and the others smelled Xiaosu's scent, and their snowy fur stood on end. Gerfalcon narrowed its eyes and glared at him. Another bad guy who was trying to steal their master. As soon as Xiaosu stepped through the door, Bai Yutong and Glutinous Rice Ball gave up on the little fur ball, howled, and pounced on Xiaosu. Xiaosu leaned to the side, dodging Bai Yutong's attack. He raised his foot and aimed at Glutinous Rice Ball. Bai Yutong fell to the ground, turned around, and jumped up, while Glutinous Rice Ball quickly changed its direction, and jumped up with the help of his boot. This was the moment Xiaosu had been waiting for. He quickly reached out with both hands and accurately grabbed their necks. Bai Yutong and Glutinous Rice Ball didn't expect to be subdued in one move again. They kicked the floor furiously, howling and whimpering. Xiaosu didn't even frown. He turned around and threw them out of the door. The two flipped in the air and landed on the limestone floor. They turned around and howled at Xiaosu, but there was nothing they could do. After all, he was stronger than them. Little Annoyance straightened its back, looked at Xiaosu with its noble blue eyes, and slowly walked out of the door. Snowflake Cake, on the other hand, skipped toward its brothers. After Little Annoyance and the others left, Xiaosu's gaze fell on gerfalcon. Gerfalcon felt the threatening gaze and couldn't help but lower its head to look at its wings. It hadn't recovered yet, so it had to endure it first. A wise man submits to circumstances. Gerfalcon jumped off the soft couch and walked slowly. When it passed by Xiaosu, it rolled its eyes at him for free. When gerfalcon was far away, Chu Qingyan finally couldn't help but burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha. This had already become her daily joke. Father Chu had already gone out to play. Xining closed the door, leaving only Chu Qingyan and Xiaosu in the room. When he heard the little girl's laughter, Xiaosu raised his eyebrows slightly. Is it that funny? Chu Qingyan immediately shut her mouth, but her wide grin betrayed her. Xiaosu walked toward her step by step. He was already a little depressed from being disturbed, and now she was making fun of him. Xiaosu felt that it was time to punish her. So when the black shadow attacked, Chu Qingyan looked up belatedly. Her chin was already in a certain someone's fingers, and then her red lips were captured. Finally she fell. This position was very suitable for hugging and kissing, and the effect was especially good. In the end, Chu Qingyan could only bury her head in his chest and gasp for breath. Xiaosu's lips curved into a satisfied smile. He knew that she was thin-skinned, so he didn't tease her anymore. At this time, there was a knock on the door. What is it? Xiaosu said indifferently. Master, the Hua family sent a message saying that something has happened at Hibiscus Pavilion. Huoling's voice came from outside the door. Although he knew that his master disliked being disturbed when he was alone with the young princess, this was an urgent matter, so he couldn't care less. What? Chu Qingyan was shocked. Chapter 764. Something happened at Hibiscus Pavilion? Chu Qingyan subconsciously looked toward Xiaosu, but the latter gave her the same confused look. Xiaosu held her hand and said in a deep voice, Don't panic, let's see what's going on first. Hearing his words, Chu Qingyan calmed down and nodded slightly. Xiaosu turned towards the door and said, Let the messenger come in. Very soon, a blue-clothed manservant followed Huoling in, his expression very anxious. Afu, what happened? Chu Qingyan recognized this person as the servant who always followed Xiao and asked immediately. Afu did not dare to delay and anxiously said as soon as he saw them. Young Master Chu, someone came to the shop this morning and said that there's a problem with our products, causing someone in their family to have an allergic reaction and almost disfigured. Now they're causing trouble at our door and are refusing to leave. They've attracted a lot of commoners, and it looks like the situation is getting worse. Chu Qingyan frowned. How could this be? Our products don't have any problems at all. They don't contain any chemicals and the ingredients are all natural. It can be used on any skin type. This servant doesn't know either. When this happened, my family's young master happened to be discussing business with someone and couldn't leave. He sent this servant to the shop to find out what happened. Young master said that if the shopkeeper couldn't solve it, he should come and find you. This servant saw that the shop was completely surrounded, and the people causing trouble were very big. This servant didn't dare to delay and immediately came to find you. Afu said anxiously. Chu Qingyan did not panic and asked a few questions in detail. Although Afu looked anxious, he answered all of them. So, they refused to let us find a doctor for them? Chu Qingyan grasped the key point. Yes, because they were accompanied by a famous doctor in the city. That doctor said that the woman had an allergic reaction after using our continuation product. Her head was swollen like a pig's head, and it was incurable now. Therefore, with that doctor around, the shopkeeper couldn't find another doctor because no one in the city had better medical skills than that doctor. As a result, many customers directly stopped buying, and some even prepared to return the goods. Young Master Chu, if this goes on, it will greatly affect the reputation of our products. Fu said in detail. This matter was very serious. As long as this crime was confirmed, the continuation product would be thrown into a quagmire. It would be impossible to make a comeback. Xiaosu listened from the side. After understanding the ins and outs of the matter, he faintly had an answer in his heart. He could not help but frown slightly. However, the little fellow was discussing with others, so it was not convenient for him to speak. Fire spirit, where is Ethereal? After pondering for a moment, Chu Qingyan immediately turned to look at Huoling. Huoling replied, Ethereal has been researching medicine in the pharmacy for the past 2 days, so he should still be there at this time. Alright Huoling, bring food to find Ethereal. Have Ethereal make a trip to the Hibiscus Pavilion and personally treat that customer. I don't feel at ease with that doctor. Chu Qingyan felt that there was something fishy going on here. Yes. Huo Ling knew that this matter was urgent, so he did not delay and left with Fu. Xiao Huan and the others were not here, and sleeves were tied up. There was no one in the hibiscus pavilion that could take charge of the situation. Chu Qingyan felt her head hurt when she thought about it. She placed her hands on the sides and prepared to get up. But when she moved, a pair of hands pressed down on her, and a disapproving voice sounded from above her head. Your body hasn't recovered yet, so you can't move around. Could it be that you want to lie in bed for the rest of your life? In Xiao Su's eyes, there was nothing more important than her health. Chu Qingyan was discouraged. Then what do we do? If this matter isn't resolved, there will be a lot of problems in the future. My efforts will be ruined. She felt very frustrated. This feeling of not being able to move and not being able to ask for help was very uncomfortable. She had worked so hard to build up her brand. But was it going to be destroyed by someone like this? She was very unwilling. The fire hasn't even reached your eyebrows and you're already panicking? Xiao Su shook his head and reminded her. She knew that she was being too agitated, but at this time, how could she calm her heart down? Big ice cube, I don't want to, but I'm too worried. She pursed her lips and revealed a distressed expression. At this time, she found a very important problem. It was that there were very few people by her side that she could use. Xining's personality was not strong enough. She could deal with the matters in the house, but when it came to urgent matters, she was still lacking. Xiao Huan had been sent out by her, and Jean Xian's duties were not here. Su Yi and the others were also the same. At this time, other than being anxious and angry, what else could she do? Xiao Su knew that she was anxious and reached out his hand to pat her little head. This matter didn't come out earlier or later, but appeared when you guys were at the peak of your power, and no one was around. Think about it carefully, don't you think it's strange? Xiao Su deliberately lowered his voice at this time, like the murmuring of flowing water. It carried a sense of peace and slowly drove away her anxiety. Chu Qingyan seriously thought about his words. I also felt that it was strange just now. Could it be that someone wants to suppress us? That's possible. Xiao Su nodded. I was injured and wasn't around. I sent Xiao Huan away. Coincidentally, Xiao was discussing business and then the matter happened. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and her gaze darkened. It's really a coincidence that it happened when no one was in charge. Xiao Su nodded again. The little fellow had not fainted from anxiety and her thoughts were still very clear. So you're saying that Xiao might have been deliberately delayed by someone, so that she wouldn't be able to deal with it? Chu Qingyan's eyes flashed. If this is a trap, then it's probably the case. Chu Qingyan immediately called out Su Yi. This subordinate is here. Su Yi, who was guarding outside, immediately walked in. Bring some people to find Xiao right now. No matter what she's doing or who's holding her back, bring her to Hibiscus Pavilion. It's urgent. Yes. Su Yi accepted the order and quickly walked out. After Su Yi left, Chu Qingyan leaned on Xiao Su's body, feeling a little tired. Because she had lost too much blood in the past few days, coupled with the recent special period, she often felt weak all over. This time, let's take a gamble and see if someone is plotting against us behind our backs. And Xiao Su rubbed her head. Seeing her haggard expression, he felt a little heartache. If Xiao can make it in time, it'll be best if she can deal with it successfully. If she can't, then we can only blame ourselves for being unlucky. I hope it's not a trap set up by someone. If I find out that someone is playing tricks behind our backs, I definitely won't let them off. Chu Qingyan said coldly. Although she was a merchant and could not avoid some despicable methods, she disdained this kind of framing the most. There's no need to be polite to this kind of person. Xiao Su hugged her in his arms, his tone exactly the same. Chu Qingyan nodded. If Xiao is really being held back by something, then I've let her down. But I don't regret it. At most, I'll just go back and apologize to her and make amends. At this time she couldn't move, so she could only make things difficult for Xiao. She hoped that her efforts would not be in vain. Chapter 765. Although she felt sleepy and Xiao Su tried to persuade her a few times, Chu Qingyan still insisted on waiting for the news. However, she let him go first. She knew that he still had a lot of things to deal with, and didn't want to delay him. 2 hours later, the person who came back was not Su Er and the others who came to inquire about the news, but Hua Xiuli. As soon as she saw Hua Xiuli, Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. She straightened up and immediately asked, "How is it?" Hua Xiuli sat down on a chair and fanned herself with her sleeves. She gasped for air and said, "Let me drink some water first. I'm so thirsty." Xining served her tea at the right time. After Hua Xiuli took a big gulp, she relaxed her tone. She wiped the sweat on her forehead and looked at Chu Qingyan, who had a worried expression. "I knew you would be anxious, so I rushed over. I was afraid that the servants wouldn't be able to explain it clearly and make you worry for nothing." Although Hua Xiuli was sweating profusely, she didn't look sad at all. Chu Qingyan was slightly relieved and let her take a breath. "There's no hurry. Take your time." Hua Xiuli nodded. At this time, she began to explain what happened today. "I know that Afu came to you today to ask for help, but he hasn't been to Hibiscus Pavilion recently, so he doesn't know what happened in Hibiscus Pavilion recently. Let me analyze it. Today there was a woman who brought her family to the shop and made a scene. She said that our products contain toxins that are harmful to the human body, causing her to be poisoned and allergic. There was also the testimony of a famous doctor in the city, as if to prove that we are guilty of murder for money. Moreover, they chose the busiest time of the day to come, attracting countless onlookers who didn't know the truth. The matter suddenly became big. However, the shop checked the purchase record and found that she bought it half a month ago. If she was allergic, she would have been allergic long ago. It wouldn't have been delayed until now. Things are fishy. I originally planned to go to Hibiscus Pavilion today, but suddenly, a guest came to our house and said that he wanted to discuss business with us. I was asked to stay by my father. Coincidentally, when the incident happened, I was pestered by the guest and could not get away. I could only let Afu go first. Fortunately, you sent Ethereal to treat her, but the woman was guilty and refused to let Ethereal feel her pulse. Later, when you sent someone to tell me the seriousness of the situation, I immediately rushed over. This is obviously a well-designed scam. I said I didn't treat her and sent people to ask Afu to treat her. That family had no choice but to let Ethereal treat her. I have to say that your people are really skilled. That woman was poisoned because she ate a mutually reinforcing food. Once the medicine was applied, it immediately took effect. Speaking of this, Hua Xiu let out a long sigh. She said to Chu Qingyan, "Actually, this kind of thing is not uncommon in my business. But often, this kind of method can easily destroy a shop. If we didn't stop it in time today, I'm afraid that if it worsened, the consequences would be unimaginable." Hearing that the crisis was resolved, Chu Qingyan's heart, which was in the air, calmed down a little. What happened in the end? I sent people to send them to the officials. This is obviously a frame-up. But they ran away halfway. Hua Xiu said angrily. "Qingyan, you don't know. The person who said that he wanted to do business with my family simply appeared out of thin air. Our Hua family has been in business for many years, and no one has dared to go against us so blatantly. Hearing what you said, it really feels like someone is plotting. Then did you find any clues?" Chu Qingyan's expression became serious. "Before I could investigate, those people ran away when they saw that the situation was not good. But I already have a suspect." Hua Xiu clenched her fist and said angrily. "Who? The Chun family. Didn't the Chun family send people to buy a lot of our products before? At that time we even discussed that he might want to research the ingredients and make it himself. Maybe he couldn't research it later, so he came up with this kind of despicable method to destroy us. If he can't get something, no one else can. I heard him say this before. And once the continuation products appear, the Chun family's business will be hit the hardest. So I dare to conclude that it's his dirty trick." The more Hua Xiu said, the angrier she became. She drank another mouthful of water to suppress her anger. Chu Qingyan heard her, and thought for a moment. "Xiuli, we don't have any evidence now. Let's not jump to conclusions." Hua Xiuli took a deep breath and nodded. We can send people to pay close attention to the Chen family's movements. Also, we can secretly investigate the whereabouts of that family and that businessman. If we can follow the clues to find the person behind the scenes, then it will be even better. Chu Qingyan said in a deep voice. Qingyan, what you said is very reasonable. Let's follow your method. If it were me, I would fight the Chen family to get justice. Xiaoli, you are too impulsive. You have more business experience than me. Why are you so impulsive? Hua Xiaoli touched her head and was a little ashamed. Actually, it's fine usually. It's just that I can't control my temper when it comes to the Chen family. Why? Could it be that you have some other relationship with the Chen family besides your rivalry with them? Chu Qingyan asked curiously. Chu Qingyan just asked casually, but Hua Xiaoli nodded seriously. It can be said that we have a deep hatred. Chu Qingyan was slightly surprised. This is? Hua Xiao shook her head and looked disgusted. Forget it, let's not talk about it. Anyway, we are irreconcilable with them. Chu Qingyan knew that this might involve the secrets of the two families, so she didn't ask any more questions. Let's not talk about this matter. You are injured and should recuperate. Don't worry. I'll transfer an experienced manager from another shop to help you. We'll talk about it when Yan Luo and the others come back. Hua Xiaoli tidied her hair and found that her clothes were wrinkled because she had rushed all the way, so she tidied up as she spoke. This proposal solved Chu Qingyan's urgent problem, so she readily agreed. That's right, I have something to tell you. Hua Xiaoli suddenly smiled and winked mysteriously at Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan's eyes curved into crescents. Let's hear it. At this moment, in a splendid palace thousands of li away, faint incense smoke was rising in spirals. The entire palace hall was filled with a refreshing fragrance. However, the main seat of the palace hall was surrounded by a dense atmosphere that made people afraid to breathe. You're saying that Su has been bewitched by that vixen? The speaker's posture was graceful and elegant, but his tone was very harsh. This subordinate doesn't dare to say. However, His Highness has clearly refused to return to the capital. The guard kneeling on the ground lowered his head. Empress Liang gave a cold humph. Don't think that this consort doesn't know that he's protecting that vixen, Chu Qingyan, just because this consort is in the capital and far away from the emperor. For her sake, he even dared to go against this consort in public. He wasn't even willing to send troops when he requested. In the past, he wouldn't have disobeyed this consort's orders. Your Imperial Highness, please don't be angry. If you get angry, others will be pleased. Luo Yun handed over a cup of tea. That's right. Otherwise, I'll let consort you have it easy. Empress Liang took a deep breath to suppress her anger, then took the teacup. Your Imperial Highness, if you want to deal with Chu Qingyan, this servant has an idea. Luo Yun bowed slightly. Oh, tell me about it. Empress Liang raised her brows as a light flashed through her eyes. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.